Chapter 15-17. After getting ready, Tianyun headed straight for the light trial. When he stepped into the light trial passage, he immediately felt a ray of sunlight wrapping around him. He looked up and saw that the surrounding walls were made of light spirit stones. Such extravagance could only be found here. Light spirit stones could generally be used to create Empyrean spirit treasures, but here they were used to create a passage corridor. This was very extravagant. Forget about extravagance, this could simply be described as a wastrel. After all, there didn't seem to be any use for this corridor. It just looked more beautiful. This is really extravagant. Only here would someone spend so much money to create something like this. Tianyun shook his head, but he didn't relax at all. When he entered this place, the light trial had already begun. Naturally, every step was dangerous. If he wasn't careful, he could die here. However, he didn't see any special array formations or dangers along the way. It was just a long passage that led to an unknown area in front of him. Is there no danger here? Tianyun continued walking forward, but he didn't relax his vigilance. If he treated this place as a stroll, he would die miserably. After walking for a short while, he arrived at the central area of the passage. Suddenly, the surrounding walls emitted a dazzling light that turned into countless light swords that pierced towards him. These light swords condensed the energy of all the light spirit stones. They pierced towards him, wanting to nail him to death here. In an instant, all the light spirit stones lit up, including the light spirit stones that had just entered. At this time, Tianyun immediately felt the danger of death surging towards him from all directions. This was just the beginning, but these light swords that pierced through him were already as strong as a late-stage Empyrean level attack. Tianyun stomped his feet and erupted with all the power of his bloodline, rushing forward. At the same time, he brandished the 5-dragon divine spear in front of him, combining it with the 5 element cores in his body to maximize its effect. 5 energy dragons whizzed out of the long spear and circled around his body, constantly destroying the light swords that pierced him. The 5 energy dragons were like a thick shield that constantly revolved around him. Not only could these 5 energy dragons attack, but they could also defend. The effect was shocking. But correspondingly, the consumption was also extremely shocking. In just a short while, the consumption skyrocketed. We've just entered, and we already have to face the fierce attacks of a late-stage Upper Empyrean. This is really terrible. Tianyun instantly felt the pressure multiply. He had only just entered, yet he had to unleash his full power in order to withstand the pressure. Even his crazy damage mode was unleashed. He was facing the fierce attack of a late-stage Upper Heavenly Venerable. Moreover, it was a large-scale, full-range attack. If he didn't go all out, he would definitely be beaten into a sieve. As for the light core, it was useless here. How could it be of any use against these ferocious attacks? If one was not careful, they would be turned into a sieve. No wonder it felt so dangerous. Without an Upper Empyrean, who would dare to casually enter this place? Tianyun complained incessantly. Fortunately, he had advanced to the Heavenly Lord level. Otherwise, he would have definitely died here. If an ordinary powerhouse were to enter, they would definitely need to be at the level of an Upper Empyrean. Otherwise, it would be impossible to pass through here. As he charged forward, he suddenly felt a little familiar. Why was this attack style a little similar to the Dragon Sovereign Shrines? Could it be that the Dragon Sovereign Shrine's divine seal was inscribed by the previous owner of this place? Tianyun felt that it was a little similar, but this place was a little more tyrannical. The concentrated light swords were really killing him. After charging forward, Tianyun finally rushed out of this passage. What came into view was a wall of light. It was also made of light spirit stones. The power of the light attribute shrouded him and locked him within. Tianyun didn't have time to react, he was already trapped inside. While he was trapped inside, he immediately felt the surrounding temperature start to rise at an alarming rate. What's going on? Yun couldn't handle it, he was trapped by it. He reached out and slapped the side. With a bang, it was as if he had slapped a transparent wall. With a sweep of the appraisal eye, he immediately saw the effect. Wall of light has an extremely strong defense, can trap the enemy inside while continuously raising the temperature inside, completely vaporizing the enemy. Now, the temperature was rising rapidly. It felt as if all the light in the celestial domain was gathered here and on his body. How could the temperature not rise? This was practically burning him to a crisp, or even vaporizing him. At that time, there would really be nothing left of him, only air. This is too ruthless. Every move is fatal. Yun didn't hesitate. He wanted to teleport out. His figure flashed and he passed through the wall of light. However, as soon as his feet touched the ground, light walls rapidly descended from all directions and trapped him. The light walls couldn't stop him, but he also couldn't escape from the light walls' encirclement. Especially that shocking temperature. It was really too terrifying. It was many times hotter than the flames he had experienced so far. This was the first time he had encountered such a special attack. He didn't expect that when the light attribute reached a certain level, there would be a brand new attack method. Seems like it won't let me pass easily. I definitely have to destroy this place to pass. Yun frowned. This was really not easy. Then, he took a deep breath and ignored the light surrounding him. He held the 5-dragon divine spear in his hand. 5-dragon roar, activate. Yun roared. The 5-dragon divine spear in his hand released a dazzling 5-colored light. 20 times the strength was instantly stacked. Combined with his various strengths, his combat power directly exploded. Roar. The 5 dragons were much stronger than the ones he had released before. This was a consumable skill. How could the power be the same? The terrifying 5 dragons fiercely slammed into the light wall. The moment they touched it, the hard light wall seemed to have turned into thin ice and was easily smashed. After it was smashed, it continued forward and slammed into the light wall in front of it. This was the final wall of light, the wall of light that blocked his way. If he did not break it, there would be more light enveloping him and trapping him here. Boom! The 5 dragons slammed into the light wall and smashed it. 2 light walls were smashed consecutively. After the 2 light walls were smashed, the light surrounding him disappeared completely. Everything returned to normal. That burning feeling finally disappeared. Chapter 15:18. After the final light wall was destroyed, it was as if a large formation had been destroyed. Everything returned to normal. Now, he could finally heave a sigh of relief. After 2 consecutive fierce attacks, he couldn't relax at all. Now, he could take a breather. There were no more attacks around him, so he could take a breather. Yun looked at his body. A large part of it was charred. However, it wasn't a serious injury. He would be fine after a little recovery. If he had been a little slower, he would have been completely burnt and then vaporized. His physique was strong, but the power of the light element was even stronger. If he didn't have the light core in his body, he would have been even more charred. The light core could alleviate the effects a little, making the effects less intense. Of course, it was only a part of the effect. It wasn't the key. He thought that with the light core it would be a little easier. Now, it seemed that it was indeed a little easier, but only a little. It's just the beginning and it's already so terrible. I wonder what will happen later? While Yun was recovering, he looked around at the situation. It was still barren, except for the light spirit stones. Only the passageway in front of him looked a little strange, but there were no other problems. However, the higher the difficulty, the more amazing the rewards. Yun believed that after passing this, the rewards would be amazing. The rewards in the mortal world weren't bad, let alone the rewards here. If he could control the heavenly realm, he might be able to kill a heavenly god with one blow. Just thinking about it made him excited. If he could control the heavenly realm and fly around, he could kill everything in his way. No one would be able to stop him. Of course, it was just a thought. He had to control the 3 realms first. The rest could be discussed later. After a little relief, Tianyun continued forward. This time, he was more vigilant. He had been attacked twice in a row. He didn't know what kind of attacks he would receive later. The power would only be stronger, not weaker. Shortly after, Tianyun continued forward. When he stepped into the passage, he immediately became nervous. After all, this was equivalent to a passage to the next level. Who knew? It might be like before, with countless light swords piercing through it. When he entered, he was greeted by rows of statues. Each statue looked different and held different weapons in their hands. His expression was especially solemn. These statues were also made of light spirit stones, but they were mixed with other materials, so it was not clear what they were. However, these statues exuded a dangerous aura, as if they could come to life at any time. "Do you want me to beat up these statues?" As Tianyun looked at these statues, his heart sank. Looking at the row of statues, he could sense that their cultivation bases were all upper-level Empyreans. There weren't many of them. There were only 8 of them. It would be fine to fight them one by one, but it wouldn't be easy to fight a group of them. Even though he had made quite a few breakthroughs now, there was still a gap between him and a powerful upper Empyrean. It wouldn't be easy to deal with him. Immediately after, he quickly got ready. He gripped the 5 dragon god's spear tightly, ready to fight at any time. Then, he stepped forward and entered the range of the statues. However, these statues didn't move at all. They didn't rush over and attack him like he had imagined. Strange, why aren't they acting according to the rules? Tianyun frowned. He was ready, but there was no movement at all? However, he didn't relax at all. He walked forward step by step. When he came to the side of one of the statues, the statue suddenly shrouded him with a light that attacked his soul. In an instant, Tianyun felt that he had entered a strange illusion. Thousands upon thousands of soldiers and horses whizzed past him, and all around him was a chaotic battle. Tianyun had just reacted when he saw a few Empyreans rushing over. They held weapons with fierce expressions and slashed at him. Tianyun's eyes narrowed. He didn't panic at all. He waved the 5 dragon god's spear in his hands and counterattacked. Who knew that when he waved, his attack passed through their bodies and didn't cause any harm to them. Similarly, they couldn't attack Tianyun either. They all passed through him. Tianyun quickly turned his head to look and discovered that this group of Empyreans was actually facing off against the god general in the statue. This god general waved the giant sword in his hands and started fighting with the Empyreans that rushed over. "A bunch of arrogant people, quickly come and die!" This god general roared and rushed over. The giant sword in his hands danced wildly. Everywhere he went, Empyreans were chopped into pieces. They were all upper Empyreans, but his level was much higher. Middle Empyreans were simply crushed by him. He swept his way over and was unrivaled. Illusion, Tianyun immediately reacted. It turned out that all of this was an illusion and not real. Because it was relatively sudden, he really couldn't tell for a moment just now. He looked around. It had turned into a battlefield. Countless powerhouses were fighting here. However, it was very obvious that this was an extreme suppression. This side was divided into 2 sides. One side was extremely powerful, crushing everything. Among them, he even saw the evil spirit race. The other wave had gathered many forces, forming a force to resist their fierce attacks. Among them, the divine general was on the weaker side. Could this be the battle of the divine realm? Tianyun reacted slightly. He felt that this should be the battle of the divine realm, or more accurately, the battle of the divine emperor. In order to create a divine emperor, it triggered a battle of divine emperors. There were many ancient Empyreans present, and they were already in a state of lacking resources? Kill them! extract their bloodlines and resources. They'll all be ours. With these resources, we will offer them all to our Lord and let him become a divine emperor. A bunch of ants are still struggling on their deathbed. Destroy them. Other than the evil spirit race, there were also many other powerful races on the other side. As for the other side, they were all weak races, including the human race. However, there were also powerful races, such as the divine spirit race. Among them, this god general was from the divine spirit race. In order to become a divine emperor, you actually slaughtered living beings at will. You want to exterminate all races. It is truly too cruel. The god general shouted. Empyrean Xianglong, have you been kicked in the head? They are all low-level life forms. Why is your divine spirit race protecting them? Your divine spirit race is also protecting such lowly life forms. It is truly lowly. The Empyrean on the other side mocked. There might be strong and weak life forms, but there is absolutely no difference between high and low. Empyrean Xianglong said coldly. Chapter 15:19. In this God-Emperor battle, Yi Tianyun also saw other races, and even Feng Qiuzun's parents. He did not know if they were Feng Qiuzun's parents, but from their appearances, they did look somewhat similar. However, Feng Qiuzun's parents were not on the side of the evil spirit race, but on the side of the divine spirit race. The result was already very obvious. The true truth was that Feng Qiuzun's parents were not accomplices in the God-Emperor battle, but were helping the divine spirit race fight against the enemy. Rather than saying that they were fighting against the enemy, it was better to say that they were protecting themselves and their homes. If they did not resist, their homes and loved ones would be destroyed. The battle continued like this. Yi Tianyun acted as a bystander, watching everything. He did not expect to find the truth so quickly. He did not even need to look around to find the truth here. However, he kept a straight face as he watched everything. In the end, this Sky Sovereign Xianglong died on the battlefield, killed by many Sky Sovereigns. After Sky Sovereign Xianglong was killed, he retreated from the illusion. His body was not injured, and he was just a bystander watching from the side. He did not say a word as he continued to walk forward. When he walked in front of another statue, a ray of light enveloped him, causing him to once again enter the illusion. This time, the illusion was the same as before, but it was from a different perspective. It was also an ancient sky sovereign fighting, and it was also a divine spirit race, but it was a different scene. However, it was still the God-Emperor battle, but he could see more tragic scenes, all of them being slaughtered. All sorts of forces were being crushed, and the weak forces were being forced to retreat. Everything fell into darkness. Even so, they still tried their best to resist, led by the divine spirit race. Fortunately, this was only the inner God realm, and had nothing to do with the outer God realm. Thus, there was basically no danger in the outer God realm. However, if the inner God realm had been conquered by them, would the outer God realm be far away? Yi Tianyun could not see the results from here, but he could roughly guess the result. The battle ended in a draw, and both sides suffered heavy casualties. After all, those with low talent or weak bloodlines were the majority. Ants could bite an elephant to death. This logic was not wrong. Under such circumstances, the outer God realm would not be damaged. Otherwise, the result would be the same as the inner God realms, with many damaged God realms. It would be quite miserable. Soon, the divine general died and he bounced out. He didn't say a word and continued to walk forward, but his expression was much more serious. He roughly knew what was going on here. It wasn't to kill him, but to let him understand the real history. Now, the truth and history had been covered up by the almighties of the fifth grade God realm. They had even slandered and slandered others. Without a doubt, most of the current grade 5 God realms were those disgusting fellows from before. They didn't win back then, but they didn't lose either. They just continued to stay in the best place. As for when they would make a comeback, It would be another war of misery and suffering. It didn't take long for him to experience the illusions of the 8 statues one by one, and experience the battle of the gods from back then. When he reached the end, the exit was right in front of him. As soon as he stepped out, he saw a huge core of light, the 7th stage realm. He did not expect to find a rank 7 light core here as well. He had thought that it would be at the 5th or 6th grade. He did not expect it to be at the 7th grade. Of course, it was meaningless to him now. He was already a rank 7 core. At most, he could strengthen the light planet a little. It's over just like that? Tianyun was stunned. He had thought that there would be some special test, but it seemed like there wasn't any. Just when he thought that there would be no test, the light core suddenly enveloped him with a beam of light. A moment of carelessness and he was enveloped. He couldn't even dodge. The speed was too fast, and he was enveloped. Again? When Tianyun came back to his senses, he found himself in the middle of a battlefield. The surroundings were in chaos, and it was still the battle of the god emperors. There was no change from before. I've been looking all the way here. Why am I still looking? Could it be that I can see the situation of the owner of this place? Tianyun's eyes lit up. He looked all the way here and thought about it carefully. He really did not know who the owner of this place was. What kind of existence could create such a powerful 3 realms? But one thing is clear, this person must be from the God-Spirit race, and he is the patriarch of the God-Spirit race. On the surface, this person must be from the God-Spirit race, there is no doubt about it. Kill! At this time, a heavenly venerate next to him swung the long sword in his hand and attacked Tianyun. Tianyun didn't feel anything at first. It's just an illusion anyway. But when the opponent attacked him, he immediately felt a sense of crisis from the bottom of his heart. It made him subconsciously thrust forward, and his power directly burst out. Boom! The lower-level heavenly venerate who rushed at him was stabbed by his spear. Ding! Successfully killed the illusion. Reward: 100 compressed EXP, 100 compressed crazy point. Huh? I can kill it! Tianyun was stunned. He didn't expect that he could kill the illusion. This place was completely open to him. Although he came in as a soul, if he was attacked, it will cause serious damage to his soul. If it's serious, he will become an idiot, which is no different from being dead. I said it's not that easy. It seems that the final level wants me to experience this scene personally. Tianyun felt helpless. At first, he thought it was over, but now it seems that he was naive. After he killed an heavenly venerate, other heavenly venerates rushed at him crazily, treating him as an enemy. Damn it, killing them doesn't give me EXP. Tianyun felt very depressed. He doesn't like this situation. If he killed them, he could get a lot of EXP, but who knows, it's only 100 EXP. What can 100 EXP do? For him now, he doesn't want to kill them. But now he can only bite the bullet, otherwise he will die here. Immediately, he killed the heavenly venerates who rushed at him, but the EXP he got is still very poor. I don't know how to pass this level. Do I have to fight until the end? Tianyun didn't know whether to laugh or cry. After all, if he is killed, his soul will be damaged, and he will become an idiot even if he doesn't die. It means that he has to fight until the end, and it's possible to achieve some goal. Chapter 1520. Tianyun killed the Empyrean powerhouses that kept pouncing over from all directions. However, he wasn't fighting alone. There were many powerhouses that came over to support him. Although it was an illusion, everything was so real. Some even gave him medicinal pills or asked if he was injured. If he didn't already know that it was an illusion, he would really treat this place as the real world. He even substituted himself into it and became the resistance. He was now playing the role of one of them. He didn't know how long he had been fighting for. He started to get to know many Empyreans and gathered together to discuss how to resist. They didn't have any plans to counterattack. They were completely defending and filling in the gap. Everyone looked as if they were facing death with equanimity. They were already prepared to die here. The difference between the two sides was too great. It was simply a nightmare, a battle where they would be crushed. But they could only hold on. If they could choose to perish together, they would choose to perish together. If they could slash twice, they definitely wouldn't just slash once. They were all fighting with this kind of mentality. If they didn't resist, they would be at the mercy of others. More importantly, the families behind them would be destroyed by these factions. They had no choice but to pick up weapons and resist. As long as they had a bit of combat strength, they would throw themselves into the battle. In a trance, Yi Tianyun felt like he had been here for a long time. They had also fought for many years. During this period there were countless casualties. He also didn't know how many Empyreans and Divine Lords he had killed. Among them, he had even saved many people. It was as if he had really integrated into it. The casualties are really too heavy, Yi Tianyun shook his head. He had witnessed the destruction of many factions. They retreated again and again, constantly being suppressed by the other side. He felt that after this battle, many factions in the God Realm would basically fall back to the level of Grade 1 or Grade 2 God Realm. It was really too tragic. The other side was too strong, so strong that it could be described as abnormal. The most obvious thing was when they were enemies. The other side had too many powerhouses. If they had 10 Empyreans on their side, the other side had 30 to 40. It was simply a crushing defeat. Whether it was celestial deities or Empyreans, they were much stronger than the other side. Even divine lords could crush many of the other side. Under the crushing defeat of the other side, they could only retreat again and again, suffering heavy casualties. But they could only defend, and they had to fight without stopping. Yi Tianyun was completely infected by this spirit. Perhaps they didn't do it for so-called justice, but to protect their homes or loved ones. That's why they chose to do so. But this alone was enough to move Yi Tianyun. Perhaps even he himself would disregard his own safety to resist it. Not good, not good. A large number of powerful enemies slaughtered their way over, as if this was a great all-out attack. They sent many heavenly deity powerhouses over, and there were even more, quite a few Empyreans. They even used a large number of giant beasts. An Empyrean hurriedly came in from outside. Before he finished speaking, waves of energy surged over from outside, and the expressions of the group of people changed. When they rushed out, they discovered that groups of star domain divine beasts had torn through space and were charging toward them. He opened his mouth wide and spat out many experts. Like a divine soldier descending from the heavens, he passed through the layers of eyes and formations and charged in just like that. At the same time, the star domain divine beasts even sucked in some powerhouses, immediately plunging their headquarters into a chaotic battle. Yi Tianyun followed out and saw the sky full of heavenly deities pouring down from the sky. It was really a great all-out attack this time. This time they're really desperate. They want to exterminate us in one go. Empyrean Skycloud, we're dead for sure this time. Why don't we slip into the outer divine regions? At that time, we can escape into Fanyu. They definitely can't find us then. Yeah, we'd better escape? I'm afraid we're really going to lose this time. There are too many powerhouses. There's no way to fight at all. Escape to Fanyu. They definitely won't bother to invade Fanyu. Fanyu doesn't have anything. They definitely won't attack. The Empyreans who were on better terms with Yi Tianyun all had thoughts of escaping in their hearts. Some did not need to say anything and just turned to escape. In the end, many of them still chose to escape rather than fight to the death. Some chose to escape while others chose to resist. Those who would stay here were still the majority. It wasn't that they weren't afraid of death. Instead, many things were left here. They could only choose to fight. Escape? Yi Tianyun knew that the crucial moment had finally arrived. Should he choose to escape? Or should he stay and fight? If he chose to escape, he could survive. He was in his soul state. If he was killed, he might become an idiot. At best, he would suffer heavy injuries. During this period of time, he could feel it. When his soul was attacked, that kind of tearing pain was really unbearable. Fortunately, he could temper his soul all this time, and his cultivation rose steadily. Now, under this tempering, his soul state actually broke through to the early stage upper heavenly venerable level. This was something unexpected. When he first came in, he saw that there was so little experience and wasn't interested at all. Who knew that later on, when he discovered that he could temper his soul, he unexpectedly improved. From this, it could be seen that when the soul was attacked, one would really become an idiot. At best, one would suffer heavy injuries. Tianyun was confident that he wouldn't become an idiot. But if he suffered heavy injuries, it would be rather troublesome to recover. If he ran, seeing so many Empyreans resisting desperately by the side, he chose to run? Even though this was an illusion and it already happened in reality, he could not bear to do so. Empyrean Skycloud, what are you still waiting for? Hurry up and escape together. The Empyrean by the side urged Tianyun, hinting for him to hurry up and escape together. Previously, Tianyun saved them. He would naturally pull him and escape together. No, I won't run. I'll continue to stay and fight. Tianyun looked ahead with a scorching gaze and said in a solemn voice, I'm not a coward. It's more for the sake of my home. If I really retreat, then there'll really be no way out anymore. Even if it was an illusion, he still chose to fight to the end. Escaping, his soul was fine, but he would feel unresigned in his heart. Staying here for so long, he was already thoroughly immersed in it, becoming a resistor. He did not choose to escape previously. Why did he choose to escape at the critical moment? Empyrean Skycloud will be leaving first. You're on your own. One after another, Empyrean chose to escape and did not go crazy together with Tianyun. Tianyun gripped the 5 Dragon Divine spear tightly and faced the batches of powerhouses in front, his gaze filled with fighting spirit. Take care, huh? Then let me enjoy this moment, enjoy that world-shocking battle back then. Chapter 15:21. Tianyun quickly joined the team and started fighting crazily. He didn't want to stop. Facing the heavenly venerables that pounced on him, he charged forward without hesitation and slashed fiercely. As for the heavenly gods, he didn't need to care about them for the time being. But even so, the numerous heavenly venerables made the pressure on him multiply. However, with his crazy damage mode, he still crushed them with all his might. He swept through them all, almost like a god of death. The surrounding heavenly venerables were scared out of their wit. They had never seen such a ferocious heavenly venerables, killing them like dogs. You bunch of trash, I'll kill as many as you come. Tianyun held the 5 Dragon Divine spear in his hand and swept his way, killing them one after another. When the heavenly venerables at the side saw this, their spirits were shaken, infected by Tianyun's fighting spirit. They also followed suit, their fighting spirit soaring. The opponents were scared silly. They were all heavenly venerables, but why was the gap so big? Audacious fanatic, don't be arrogant. A lower-level heavenly god roared and pounced over, holding an upper-level heavenly venerable spirit treasure in his hand, fiercely chopping down at Tianyun, the power of a heavenly god gushing out. The vast power of a heavenly god was like the descent of a true god. Especially the power of this ancient heavenly god, which was far stronger than the power of the current world that Tianyun was in, it made one's heart palpitate and despair. Tianyun felt double the pressure. Through the appraisal eye, he could clearly feel that any random heavenly god was stronger than the Great Devis. The Great Devis's level was really not bad, and could be considered one of the top types among the many lower-level heavenly gods. But here, any random lower-level heavenly god could crush the Great Devis. Whether it was the concentration of bloodline or the resources, it far surpassed the era that Tianyun was in. Therefore, even if Yi Tianyun had crazy damage mode, he was far inferior to the other party's strength. 5 Dragon Wild Roar. Yi Tianyun roared in rage, not fearing the incoming heavenly deities at all. There were no heavenly deities around him, only a group of heavenly venerables. Now that things had come to this, he could only force his way through. Waiting for reinforcements was basically impossible. Death in battle was an inevitable outcome. It was because everything was too sudden. Previously, there were quite a few heavenly deities here, and they just happened to be sent out when they were ambushed. There were many great formations here, so they believed that there wouldn't be any big problems. The result was obvious. The problem was extremely big, and they still died miserably. Yi Tianyun believed that there was only one possibility: a traitor. There must be a traitor among them to cause such a situation. No matter what era it was, there would always be traitors, and there would also be those who were afraid of death. They submitted to the enemy not only to survive, but also to make use of the opportunity to make a fortune for themselves. How dare you show off in front of me with just this bit of strength? This heavenly deity's gaze was fierce. 8 enormous arms appeared behind him, making him look like a glaring Vajra. He grabbed an enormous dragon with each hand, and with a vicious squeeze, it exploded, turning into a pile of energy light spots. It was such a domineering move, but it was completely useless. It was easily broken by the other party. Yi Tianyun's face fell. Sure enough, he had no way of dealing with it. His strength was still too far apart. He was an early-stage heavenly venerable. Dealing with a heavenly deity, this was something impossible. Crossing too many realms, especially at the ancient heavenly deity level. He was completely abused. Heavenly Venerable Skycloud, hurry and escape. We'll hold on here. That's right, hurry and escape. You're the strongest, there's hope as long as there's life. We'll help you. A group of heavenly venerables charged over from the side, helping Yi Tianyun block this heavenly deity together. But if even Yi Tianyun could not deal with it, how could they deal with it? They naturally knew that they could not deal with it, but they felt that if Yi Tianyun was alive, then there would be greater hope. Want to leave? Do you all think that you can leave? This heavenly deity laughed loudly, his celestial deity power transforming into a void divine palm, slapping over with a wave of his hand, sending them all flying. Even Yi Tianyun was sent flying together. The group of people vomited blood one after another. Yi Tianyun even suffered internal injuries from the shock, feeling like his soul was almost about to be torn apart. His situation was still all right. As for the other heavenly venerables, they were blown up with one palm. Under one palm, several heavenly venerables all died. The might of a heavenly deity could be seen at a glance. At the same time, there were already quite a few heavenly venerables surrounding this place at the periphery, carrying out a full-scale encirclement. Those who escaped in advance previously were all stopped and exterminated. Since they came to ambush, they definitely made a foolproof plan. Otherwise, how could they dare to come over casually? Die. Yi Tianyun's gaze turned intent, gripping the 5 dragons' divine spear tightly. His figure flashed, vanishing from where he was. He did not go and clash head-on with a heavenly deity, but turned around and went to clash head-on with the other heavenly venerables, killing one counted as one. Under his astonishing speed, he could escape the attacks of heavenly deities, and then continuously cut down heavenly venerables. But as the companions around him gradually disappeared, what greeted him was still the outcome of being annihilated. There were several heavenly deities surrounding him from all directions, glaring at him and saying, "This brat killed so many of our heavenly venerables, exterminate him together." Several heavenly deities sealed up, an extremely complicated sealing grand array suppressing him, making Yi Tianyun unable to move. Forget about even shifting, he could not even move, like he was fixed in the air. Looks like it's still this outcome in the end? Yi Tianyun did not despair in his heart, only calmness, and even more so knew that the outcome would become like this. The difference in strength was too great, the outcome was bound to be like this. It was just that he did not choose to escape but chose to continue fighting. It was a pity that his strength was still too lacking. If he was a little stronger, he might be able to win. But even if he won, he similarly could not change history. What should be destroyed would still be destroyed. What he was in was just an illusion, and not returning to the past. Wait a minute, brat, I'll give you one last chance. On account that you're a genius, as long as you join us, we won't pursue anything against you, and even give you generous treatment. One of the heavenly deities indicated to his companions not to be in a hurry to make a move. I can join you guys, but I only want one condition. Tianyun looked at them and said with a faint smile. What condition? Their eyes lit up. That is, if you all commit suicide, I'll join you guys, Tianyun said with a smile. Bastard, to dare play us, exterminate him. Boom, boom, boom. Attacks bombarded over from all directions, directly blasting him into dregs, deader than dead. Tianyun only felt his mind go blank, and then his consciousness completely disappeared. When he came back to his senses, he discovered that he was sitting in front of that light core, and everything was fine. I'm fine? Chapter 15:22. Tianyun sensed his soul, and was surprised to find that it had not been injured at all. Previously, when he was attacked, he felt as if his soul was being torn apart. Everything felt so real. Now that he realized that nothing had happened to him, it felt like a dream. Could it be that I'm fine being killed casually? Tianyun did not know what the conditions to pass the trial were, but it seemed that he would not be injured if he died. Just as he was guessing, the light core in front of him emitted a beam of light that enveloped him. Following that, a light attribute mark appeared on his forehead, indicating that he had become the master of this core. Following that, a wave of energy surged into his head, allowing him to know the control method here and some memories. After a detailed understanding, Tianyun was really shocked. He was not shocked by what he had obtained, but by the rules of passing. This trial was indeed a trial, and it was a test of his choices. Should he choose to escape or to continue fighting? If he fought to the end, he would be considered to have won. If he died along the way, he would become an idiot, or his soul would be severely injured. As for escaping later, it would also be considered a failure. The result would be that his soul would be severely injured, and he would not be able to become the master of this place. Fortunately, I chose to fight to the end. Tianyun knew that the outcome would be a draw, but what he had experienced was a defeat. He believed that in the end, the other heavenly gods would return and launch another round of counterattack. Finally, they would feel pain and choose to retreat. Without knowing the rules, he thought that he would pass if he survived. Who knew that he would only pass if he died, and he had to fight to the end? These trials were indeed not simple. If they were simple, it would not be called a trial. Ding. Successfully completed the special mission, passed the trial of light. Obtained the title of Master of the Heavenly Realm. He had finally completed one of the missions. All that was left was the secret trial mission. After passing it, he would be the true master of the three realms. The ancient heavenly gods are really powerful. I thought that I could compete with them, but it seems that I still need to improve. Through this failure, Tianyun clearly understood the strength of the ancient heavenly gods. He believed that there were many ancient heavenly lords and ancient heavenly gods in this world, but he was not sure where they were hiding. Once it appeared, it would definitely lead to a reign of terror. What he needed now was to greatly increase his strength. Otherwise, if he were to erupt, the three realms would definitely be destroyed. Then, he stayed there and cultivated, continuing to absorb the light core to strengthen the light planet in his body. The energy provided by Venerable Feng Qiu was ultimately still too little, and he did not dare to casually absorb it. But now it was different. He could absorb them at will, allowing him to continuously increase his strength. He couldn't relax for even a moment. As time passed, he quickly strengthened the planet of light in his body, and it was much stronger than before. Only then did he stand up. Looking at the statues behind him, he immediately felt deep veneration. After bowing deeply, Tianyun turned around and walked away. After passing through, a passageway appeared in front of him, allowing him to leave through it. After entering, he discovered that the place he was heading to was the core region of the five elements. It was as if he had gone around in a circle. There was a dark trial on the side, and a mysterious power flowed out from there. Tianyun thought about it for a while and decided to give up for now. He would come back for the trial after he raised his cultivation. The difficulty might be similar to the light trial, but he really wanted to sweep away all the illusions and destroy all those heavenly gods. After all, it was too humiliating for him to be killed. Even if it was an illusion, he had to destroy it. I'll leave first for now. I'll try again when I raise my cultivation. Tianyun was already very satisfied. He turned and left. The situation outside did not change much, and it was still progressing smoothly. Then, he went to find Emperor Fengqiu. Emperor Fengqiu stayed here, helping the cultivators of the three realms. If there was anyone who needed help, he would give them some pointers. She had nothing to do here, so she naturally wanted to find something to do. Emperor Fengqiu, I have something to tell you. Tianyun came to Emperor Fengqiu and said, What is it? Emperor Fengqiu saw Tianyun's serious expression and knew that something big had happened. I already know the truth about your parents. Tianyun came to find her to tell her the truth. The truth about my parents. It's only been a few years, and you've already found the truth? Emperor Fengqiu's eyes widened. Tianyun had only disappeared for a few years. To her, it was just a short while. She did not know how many centuries she had searched, but she had not found any truth. Yes, I've found it, Tianyun said solemnly. Then what's the situation? Emperor Fengqiu felt very nervous. She was afraid that Tianyun would say that her parents were accomplices in the battle of the God Emperors, which meant that the position of the demon was confirmed. Your parents are heroes. Tianyun looked at her and said, Hero? Emperor Fengqiu was stunned. It was too different from what she knew. Not a demon, but a hero. That's right, they are heroes. I found the corresponding memories in an ancient site. You can take a look. Tianyun took out a piece of jade. Inside it, Tianyun had stored the corresponding scene. It could recreate the situation at that time. Actually, these could be faked, so no one would treat it as the truth. He did not need everyone to know, at least Emperor Fengqiu knew. After Emperor Fengqiu finished looking, she was completely stunned. Heroes, they are heroes! Emperor Fengqiu's tears flowed. She sat on the ground and started crying, as though everything had relaxed, the worries in her heart had all disappeared. Yes, they are true heroes. Tianyun sighed. Everything is a rumor spread by those accomplices. If you announce it to the outside world, no one will believe it, but at least in your heart, you know that your parents are not demons. And Emperor Fengqiu stood up, feeling extremely embarrassed. She was embarrassed to be seen by Tianyun. Thank you, Emperor Tianyun. If not for you, I would not have found the truth so quickly. Emperor Fengqiu smiled lightly. It's great to join your side. Tianyun smiled. Don't you think I made it up? You have never seen my parents, how can you make it up? Besides, I believe that Emperor Tianyun would not do such a thing, right? Emperor Fengqiu smiled brightly. After feeling refreshed, she became cheerful. That's true. Tianyun smiled. Chapter 1523. After everything was settled, Tianyun heaved a sigh of relief and decided to stay in the three realms to take a breather. There were too many things to do recently, and he wanted to stay here for a while to see the progress of the three realms God realm. The progress of the three realms God realm was generally very smooth, and there were no problems. Everything progressed according to the previous schedule, and many cultivators broke through at lightning speed. The conditions here were simply too outstanding, many times better than the Grade 1 God Realm. Originally, they could break through quickly when they first came to the God Realm, let alone the 4th Grade God Realm. It was like jumping from the poor to the rich in an instant. Tianyun took advantage of this time to stay here and accompany his family. Every once in a while, Tianyun would stay here to rest and feel the familiar atmosphere. Perhaps this would make him more motivated. I heard that my daughter has someone she likes recently. Don't you want to go take a look? Sure, Shuyan said with a smile. Tianyun looked up, his eyes shooting out 2 rays of light. You mean Sishue has someone she likes? It's just hearsay. If you want to know, why don't you go take a look? Sure, Shuyun smiled faintly. Yes, although I often come back to accompany you, I really don't know anything about Sishue's situation. Tianyun thought for a moment, then smiled. Then I'll secretly go take a look and see what's going on. He came back often, but he would not casually investigate the situation here. He would only skim over, and would not carefully check every corner. They were in charge here, so he did not need to be so strict. Therefore, there were many things that he did not know. For example, his daughter already had someone she liked. That was different. As a father, he had to personally check and see what kind of person his daughter liked. Immediately after, he used his spiritual sense to explore and quickly found his daughter's figure. Isishua's cultivation had improved by leaps and bounds, and she had already reached the 7th refinement Earth Lord. If this continued, it would not be a problem for her to break through to the 8th or 9th refinement. As for the 10 refinements Earth Monarch, Tianyun didn't really want her to cultivate it. The difficulty was simply too high. He could only say that when it came to the 9th refinement Earth Lord, he would personally come and take a look. At this moment, Isishue was in a dueling ground, supervising a group of cultivators. They were all star venerates. Now that she was personally teaching, the group of disciples were all working hard in their cultivation. With the daughter of the region lord personally teaching them, how could they not work hard? That's about all I've taught you today. Work hard and don't let us down. After Isishue finished teaching, she said a few more words and left. However, before she could take a few steps, many disciples rushed over and surrounded her. Master E, there's something I don't understand here. Please continue to teach me. Me too, me too. There are also things that I don't understand here. Please teach me again. Me too, me too. One by one, the disciples rushed forward, wanting Isishue to teach them. Are there so many things you don't understand? Isishue frowned, but she still taught them one by one. After some guidance, they immediately understood, all of them brimming with energy. That's great, as expected of Master E. With just a few words, she enlightened me. That's right, I have a feeling of enlightenment. I feel like my world has suddenly become clear. Master E is indeed Master E. She's really amazing. All of them continuously praised Isishue. Tianyun, who was looking over, immediately smiled. These were all old tricks. They wanted to attract Isishue's attention and pretend to be diligent and studious in front of her. Tianyun could tell with one glance. How could these disciples not understand? They just pretended not to understand. They just wanted to talk and interact with Isishue more. Isishue had such a high status, but she was his daughter. How could there not be many people fawning over her? There were even countless cultivators who came to pursue her. It was not just a matter of Isishue's status. She was a genius and extremely beautiful. How could there be no one pursuing her? The number of people pursuing her could line up around several planets. Alright, you guys cultivate well. That's about it. Isishue felt that it was time to leave after teaching them. Master E, I still don't understand something. That's right. I'm also not too clear about this place. All of them rushed over, wanting to continue asking Isishue. To put it bluntly, they wanted to make her stay. It's about time. You guys can do your own things. If you want to ask anything, you can ask me when I come over in a few days. Isishua waved her hand, rejecting their request. Then, she turned and flew away. The group of cultivators was disappointed. It seemed like they could not make Isishua stay. Master E still left in the end. How could she not leave? She still has to teach the next batch of disciples. What a pity. Can't she stay a little longer? All of them were dejected, feeling that it was a pity. It would be great if Isishua stayed a little longer. They followed Isishua to the next planet and continued to teach another batch of Starry Sky disciples. She only taught them along the way. That was the basic thing for now. Apart from cultivating, she also taught these disciples. Tianyun observed along the way. He did not see any signs of liking at all. She just taught the disciples normally. After Isishua walked one round, she finally finished teaching. Following that, many earthly monarchs and even the Lord of Heaven geniuses came over. Miss E, you're done. Why don't we go to the Moonlight Restaurant to rest? I know a few famous dishes there. They're very delicious. Miss E, you've worked hard. I've been waiting for you here for a long time. I know a very beautiful place. How about I take you there to have a look? Miss E, I found an excellent cultivation ground. Let's go take a look? These were the true pursuers. They tirelessly pursued her. No matter how many times they failed, they never gave up. I've said it before. I'm not interested. If you want to pursue me, you have to surpass my father first. Otherwise, don't even think about it. Isishua pointed at them, indicating for them to give up. They did not know whether to laugh or cry. Who could surpass Tianyun? Tianyun was a legendary existence. Who could surpass him? Wasn't this making things difficult for them? When Tianyun saw this from the side, he did not know whether to laugh or cry. If this was really the standard, she would probably be lonely for the rest of her life. How could she have someone she liked? She would always be single, especially with herself as the standard. Chapter 15:24. After Isishua got rid of her pursuers, she heaved a sigh of relief. Then, she disguised herself and headed to Fallen Flower Planet. Fallen Flower Planet was one of the more prosperous planets in the god realm of the three realms. There were many bustling restaurants here, which puzzled him. Why would his daughter go to such a place? Was she here to drink? Of course, it was not that female cultivators could not drink. It was just that male cultivators usually came here to indulge in debauchery. There were not many females here. This surprised him. He did not expect his daughter to have such a hobby. He followed Isishua to one of the restaurants. She chose a table in the hall and sat down. Then, she began to drink by herself. She looked at the dancers in front of her and drank happily. This made Tianyun's eyes widen. His daughter liked this? She liked to drink and watch dances? Of course, there were other female cultivators around, so she did not stand out. It was just that she was alone here, which was a little more abrupt. The rest of the female cultivators chose a private room. Several female cultivators were watching and discussing. Isishua, on the other hand, was drinking by herself. What the hell is this girl doing? Tianyun thought for a moment, then he changed his appearance to that of a handsome young man. He walked to Isishua and said with a smile, "Miss, do you mind sitting down with me?" "I mind very much. There are seats next to us. You can sit there yourself." Isishua did not even bother to look at him. She pointed at the empty table next to her and said. The cultivator next to her laughed and teased, "Little brother, you should just sit here obediently." Tianyun smiled and did not say anything. He sat next to her and ordered a pot of wine. He was not angry. Instead, he felt very satisfied. At least she would reject people. Isishua did not say anything. She sat next to him and continued to drink and watch the performance. From time to time, when the dancers in front performed well, she would clap. She did not look like a girl at all. Instead, she looked like a man. Tianyun felt helpless. How did it become like this? Is this a way to relieve stress? Tianyun squinted his eyes at the side. However, even if it was decompression, there was nothing wrong with that. Overall, it was still very normal. However, he didn't care and continued to drink on the side. He just wanted to take a look at his daughter's private life. He couldn't possibly keep an eye on it. After some time, just as Tianyun was about to leave, the sounds of fighting suddenly came from outside. He scanned the area with his spiritual sense and discovered that there was a fight going on outside. It was unknown why two young talents were fighting. At this moment, Isishua rushed out towards the two young men who were fighting. Tianyun's heart skipped a beat and he stood up to follow them out. When they went outside, the sound of beating and cursing could be heard. "Stop!" Isishua rushed over and gestured for them to stop. But how could they stop? They fought like a raging fire, completely ignoring the people around them. "All of you, stop!" Isishua rushed up and sent them flying with a few punches and kicks, smashing them into the houses nearby. Tianyun was dumbfounded by the violence in front of him. She called for them to stop, but she went over and kicked them away? After they were kicked away, they crawled out of the houses. Isishua didn't hit them too hard, and only sent them flying with a simple kick. Their cultivation wasn't low. They were both at the 4th refinement of the Earth Monarch level, and could be considered decent talent. At this stage, Earth Monarchs were the cornerstones and were the focus of nurturing. "What are you doing? Why are you causing trouble here? Don't you know that you can't cause trouble here?" Isishua said coldly. "Who are you? What's our business?" The two of them stood up and glared at Isishua, feeling that she was being a busybody. "Who I am isn't important. What's important is the rules. Don't you know the rules here? If you cause trouble, you will be severely punished. Seeing you like this, I really feel that it's a waste of resources to nurture you," Isishua said angrily. Their expressions changed and they glared at her. "Whether it's a waste of resources or not, it's not up to you to decide. Scram to wherever you want to go." They were immediately infuriated. They, who had been specially nurtured, were more or less a little arrogant. If others said that, they would definitely be indignant. "I can decide." Isishua pointed at them and said angrily, "You and you, both have to stop providing resources for 50 years. During this period, it will depend on your performance. If your performance is good, this punishment can be stopped in advance." Stopping providing resources. This was really ruthless. She didn't restrict their activities, but this was equivalent to cutting off their source of income. This was the same logic as not giving them food to eat. Originally, food was provided for free, but now they had to earn it themselves. What right do you have?" They were all stunned. She said that they would be punished. The other enforcers didn't even come over, but the other party directly set the punishment plan. At this moment, the enforcers rushed over. They were quite fast and rushed over immediately. "Father!" One of the youths quickly came over and shouted. He didn't expect them to have a background. No wonder they would cause trouble here. "What happened?" The enforcer came over with a cold face. "The two of them are causing trouble here. There's already a rule that they can't cause trouble here. But they are causing trouble here. They must be punished." Isishua came over and said, "Father, she said that she wants to punish me and stop providing resources for 50 years. The youth hurriedly said, "That's impossible. She's not an enforcer." "Stop providing resources for 50 years? The enforcer frowned and looked at him coldly. "Stop providing resources for 50 years? That's considered a light punishment. Scram back home. I will report to stop your resources for 100 years. How can this be? Father, you're my father. You're an enforcer." The youth shouted. If the resources were stopped and he had to earn it himself, wouldn't he go crazy? "It's because he's your father that it has to be stricter. If he stops resources for 50 years, you stop for 100 years. That's it." The enforcer was extremely strict. Instantly, the two of them were dumbfounded. They didn't expect things to turn out like this. It was useless even if they had a backer. Lee Tianyun watched from the side. It seemed that the management here was very strict. The enforcers were even more strictly selected. He knew that the enforcer would definitely not be willing. However, if he was biased, the enforcer would be finished. Nothing could be accomplished without rules. Strict standards had always been what they needed. This girl, is she here for a private visit? He saw that after Lee Sishue went back to settle the bill, she continued to walk to other places. He had to admit that because there were more cultivators here, it was indeed easy for problems to arise. Chapter 1525. After knowing Lee Sishue's real purpose, Lee Tianyun instantly felt that he had thought too much. He thought that she was really here to drink with the ladies. Now, it seemed that she was here for a private visit to investigate the situation here. If the other party wasn't willing, she could scare them to death by revealing her identity. Fortunately, the enforcers were very self-disciplined. If they shielded her and Lee Sishue revealed her true identity, they would be finished immediately and be expelled from the god realm of the three realms. This was the strictness of the law. If they wanted to expel her, they would be expelled without a second chance. If they were found to have shielded her, they would be expelled. There was no room for negotiation. When they were recruited, they had to adhere to the principle of fairness and justice. If they shielded her, they would only be dead. However, there were really people who made such a mistake. In the end, it was useless even if they begged for mercy. Those who deserved to be punished would still be punished. There was no room for negotiation. Fortunately, Lee Sishue didn't reveal her true identity. This proved that the enforcers were quite self-disciplined. After Lee Sishue left, she casually walked around the planet again before heading to other areas to patrol. Then, Lee Sishue continued to patrol other areas that were prone to conflict. It had always been like this. She was with someone she liked. There was no such thing. Seems like there's no such thing at all. Lee Tianyun shook his head and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He felt that these were all rumors. He didn't know where they came from to cause such a misunderstanding. After a while, Lee Tianyun was completely sure that there was no problem. It was indeed just a rumor. Forget it. I'll just ask her personally. Lee Tianyun's figure flashed and he appeared in front of Lee Sishue. Lee Sishue was stunned at first. When she saw clearly that it was her father, she pounced on him and hugged his arm. She said in surprise, "Father, you're back." "Yes, I'm back." Lee Tianyun reached out and rubbed her little head. His eyes were full of love. "How long will it take for you to leave this time?" Lee Sishue shook his arm. "I'll probably stay for a while." Lee Tianyun thought for a while and decided to stay here for a while. Actually, every time he came back, he would look for Lee Sishue. It was just that he was in a hurry this time, so he didn't come looking for her. "By the way, I want to ask you something. You have to answer me truthfully." Lee Tianyun thought for a while and immediately wanted to get to the main topic. "What is it?" Lee Sishue blinked. She didn't know what Lee Tianyun wanted to ask her. "I heard that you have someone you like?" Lee Tianyun asked in a very simple and rude manner, without any euphemism. Lee Sishue opened her mouth in surprise. "Who said that?" "I happened to pass by some places and overheard it." Lee Tianyun looked at her and smiled. "Tell me honestly, do you have someone you like? If so, I'll have to check it out myself." Lee Tianyun didn't intend to stop them. His daughter was already a grown-up and didn't need them to care about her all the time. He wanted to see exactly what kind of young man could win his daughter's heart. How can there be such a thing? It's simply nonsense. I don't have anyone I like. Lee Sishue thought for a while and smiled. It's not that I don't have anyone I like. I like father and mother very much. And Aunt Yue and the others, I like them all. Ahem, I'm not talking about this kind of like. Do you have a man you like? Lee Tianyun felt very helpless. Did he have to say it so clearly? Didn't I say that I don't have anyone? The standard for me to choose my other half is not to be more outstanding than father, but at least to the same level as father. It's just that I haven't seen him for so long. So if I don't like him, how could there be someone I like? Isishua pouted. Really? Tianyun looked at her suspiciously. He didn't think it was very credible. How could it be fake? I wouldn't lie to you. Are you suspecting that your own daughter is lying to her father? Isishua pointed to the sky and said, When I was young, I swore that if I were to marry, I would marry someone as outstanding as father. Otherwise, I definitely wouldn't marry. Tianyun didn't know whether to laugh or cry. If that was really the case, then this daughter of his was really going to be single. Isn't this a little too exaggerated? Tianyun said with a smile. It's not exaggerated at all. I want someone as outstanding as father. No matter how bad they are, they have to be more than half. Isishua shook her head and said, Unfortunately, I haven't seen them. They are all ordinary people. There are no outstanding ones. Tianyun felt even more helpless. Using himself as the standard, where else in the three realms divine realm? Unless it spread to the other 4th and 5th grade divine realms, there were many outstanding geniuses. But how could he dare to let his daughter go out now? It wasn't safe outside now. Especially Earth monarchs here, they were simply cannon fodder. Soon after, they chatted on the way back. They chatted about all sorts of things. Isishua told him all her thoughts and worries. Tianyun listened at the side. Along the way, he realized that his wife didn't know who his daughter liked, but she wanted him to accompany Isishua more. Thinking of this, Tianyun sighed deeply. So this was the real reason. He also wanted to see how his daughter usually did things and what her true thoughts were. Through this person she liked, she immediately attracted his attention. Looks like I've really lost too much in this year. Tianyun shook his head. However, he didn't regret it. They were able to have such a smile now because of their strength. If they didn't have this premise, they would have been devoured by the evil spirit race in the beginning. How could they have such a smile? They wouldn't have been so calm. After spending some time with his daughter, he felt much better, as if his soul had been purified. What's going on recently? Tianyun asked. The situation has been very stable recently. There are many hard-working disciples among them, and all of them are very outstanding. All of them want to become your disciple, Isishua replied with a smile. Disciple? Tianyun was stunned. After thinking about it carefully, he really didn't have any disciples after cultivating for so long. In the past, he didn't have much time. Now that he had time, should he take a few disciples? He had many divine generals, but divine generals were divine generals, not disciples. Only disciples were very suitable to inherit his legacy. Some divine generals weren't suitable, so he could only give up. Yes, father, do you want to find a few disciples? Isishua smiled. Chapter 15:26. The selection of disciples was a very important matter. It could be said to be a matter of the entire 3 realms. As long as he said it, all the cultivators would immediately rush over. Some of the thick-skinned deacons would probably come to participate. Tianyun's reputation was too great. To them, he was simply a god. If it was said that the God Emperor was the strongest in the outside world, then he was equivalent to the God Emperor here. They were extremely fanatical about Tianyun. All of them wanted to pounce on him and become his personal disciple. Tianyun's strength is obvious to all of them, and his achievements are also higher than theirs. In the entire 3 realms, there was no one who did not know of his existence. As long as he did not change his appearance, he would be known immediately. Isishua did not change her appearance, so she might not be known. It was the same for Shurshuyun. She would not be recognized if she walked in a remote area. As for him, there would definitely be people who would recognize him, and they would recognize him immediately. There were statues of him everywhere. How could they not recognize him? To put it bluntly, it was difficult not to know him. Even when they first taught children to read, they would first recognize him. After he found out about this, he could not help but wipe his sweat. It had to be said that it was too exaggerated. It had been expanded by Shi Shuyun and the others. They all said that in order to strengthen their position, they had to start from the children. Prestige was always the most important. If they wanted to strengthen the hearts of the people here, they had to publicize everything well and let them know who was protecting them. However, they did not make things up. They all listed out the real situation. For example, protecting the 3 realms from the invasion of the evil spirit race. When a bunch of things were listed, it was simply a miracle. There was no need for any fake content to list out the contents of a book. After reading such books, how could they not worship Yi Tianyun? Compared to other experts, it was simply not worth mentioning. Therefore, Yi Tianyun's prestige here was very high. Everyone's dream was to become his disciple. Not to mention becoming a personal disciple, it was already very good to become an in-name disciple. Even if he couldn't become Yi Tianyun's direct disciple, it would still be an honor to become the disciple of one of his divine generals. There were many divine generals under Yi Tianyun, such as Xiaowu, who were all powerful divine generals. Their deeds were naturally recorded in the book, and everyone was familiar with them. After finalizing the plan, Yi Tianyun went to look for Shi Shuyun to discuss this matter. Shuyun, you're just spouting nonsense. Sishue doesn't have anyone she likes. You just want me to see her more. Yi Tianyun said helplessly, if you want me to spend more time with Sishue, just tell me. Why do you have to do this? If I said it directly, how could it be as interesting as you following closely behind me? Shi Shuyun covered her mouth and chuckled. This child is using you as a standard. Who in the entire 3 realms divine realm can compare to you? Just for this, you definitely have to make it up to that child. Indeed, I should make it up to her, Yi Tianyun said with a smile. It just so happens that I plan to choose a personal disciple. This way, I can see many outstanding young talents. When the time comes, maybe Sishue will take a fancy to one. You want to choose a personal disciple? Shi Shuyun's eyes lit up. You're finally going to choose a personal disciple? Yes, while I'm free now, I'll choose one. Indeed, there must be someone who can inherit my legacy. Yi Tianyun narrowed his eyes. It was naturally impossible for someone to completely inherit him. It was impossible for anyone to learn the crazy system alone. He tried his best to pass on what he was most proud of. This way, even if he was not around, at least his personal disciple would be able to guard a region. Would the future potential of those who were personally taught by him be poor? Not to mention others, just look at Sishue. Sishue was also taught by him. Naturally, her achievements were not low, far exceeding her peers by a large margin. Only a few years had passed, and she was already a 7th refinement Earth monarch. But strictly speaking, Sishue would not be his disciple. The meaning was different. His children would definitely be able to enjoy the best. There was no doubt about this. Then, I'll go and prepare now? Shi Shuyun was about to start preparing. This was a very important matter, and she definitely had to prepare in advance. Yes, you can go and prepare now. My requirements are relatively simple. The main thing is that the age cannot exceed 1,000 years. There are no restrictions on cultivation, talent, or gender. Yi Tianyun stated his requirements. No problem. Shi Shuyun nodded. She immediately knew how to prepare. Yi Tianyun's requirements were that simple. He was not like the other forces, who had many restrictions. He was limited by age. Age was very important. If it was too long, then one's achievements would be very limited. Actually, he was already very relaxed. Those who were above 1,000 years old could not participate. They were all from the older generation. Most of them were below 100 years old. Therefore, his requirements were very relaxed. Basically, everyone could participate. He wanted to prevent the older generation from participating. The older generation should not participate and leave the opportunity to the younger generation. After giving the instructions, Tianyun did not sit there foolishly. Instead, he probed with his spiritual awareness. He planned to do a simple check to see if there were any suitable ones. Although they would all come, it did not mean that everyone would really come. Some of the less talented ones were too embarrassed to participate. After a casual glance, he quickly found a rather special exception. A young man was holding a wooden stick and constantly swinging it on the tree. He smashed it again and again, leaving shallow marks on the thick tree trunk. This young man was already drenched in sweat. However, he did not give up on practicing. He continued to smash the stick again and again. It was winter. Snow constantly fell on his body and was melted by the heat emitted by his body. This scene immediately reminded him of that time a long time ago. It was the same for him. He tried one move after another, all for the sake of survival. This young man's body also had a slight defect. That was, one of his feet was not very flexible. Obviously, he had suffered some kind of injury, which made it difficult for him to recover. Although the resources in the Three Realms God Realm were not bad, it did not mean that everything would be provided. For example, to treat his injury, he needed a high-grade medicinal pill. Judging from his situation, he could not get it. The main reason was that his cultivation was not high. He was just an ordinary core condensation cultivator. If it was a long time ago, his cultivation was indeed not bad. But in today's era, it could only belong to the bottom level. Even so, he did not give up. He still practiced the stick technique again and again. I must get more contribution points in exchange for a bone-replenishing pill. This young man's eyes were firm. There was no trace of despair in his eyes. Chapter 1527. The rules of the God Realm of the Three Realms were all about fairness. For example, this young man in front of him was not very agile, but he could still earn contribution points. For example, sweeping the floor or farming. These were all ways to earn contribution points. The only problem was that the quantity was very small. These things were not difficult to begin with, so the contribution points could not be too high. However, with his current situation, he could only do such things. As for killing demonic beasts or picking spiritual herbs, he could not do that for the time being. However, he did not give up, because there was a hope buried in his heart. That was why he was so persistent. As long as he took his time, he would be able to exchange for the bone-replenishing pill one day. So why despair? If he could not obtain it at all, then he would despair. Tan Tiankong, Tan Lame, are you practicing here again? Aren't you going to sweep the floor? If you don't sweep the floor, how can you earn contribution points? The floor has been swept clean. He should be going to plow the fields. The wooden stick in his hand is just right for plowing the fields. You're right. We'll be leaving first. Little Lame, you can slowly practice here. We'll go pick spiritual herbs and earn contribution points. When a group of young disciples passed by and saw this young man practicing with a stick, they could not help but mock him. There was no power that did not have this kind of mockery. The God Realm of the Three Realms strived for fairness and justice, but that was only in terms of position or contribution points. As for internal unity and such, it was not easy to say. Especially for the lower levels, the management would definitely not be perfect. Unless it was a bit higher, then they strived for unity and could not have any discrimination. However, this was only on the surface. Rules were rules, and they could not completely change people's thinking. There were still people who bullied the weak. At least they would not beat people up. This was still not allowed. Private fights would be punished, unless it was a martial arts competition, but that was another matter. Just this point alone was enough to protect many weaker cultivators from being bullied. The young man in front of him was one of them, and his name was Tan Tiankong. His parents probably wanted him to soar in the sky. However, his legs were not nimble now. Even cultivation was a problem, let alone flying. If one's cultivation was too low, they would not be able to fly. They would need to be several steps closer to be able to fly. Tan Tiankong clenched his fists and ignored their mockery. He continued to hit the tree trunk, tossing himself until he collapsed. After a short rest, he limped away. It seemed that his back was very miserable. If no one paid attention to him, they would only insult him. When he returned home, his parents immediately welcomed him with smiles on their faces. Tan, you're back. It's time to eat. Come and eat with us. His mother came over and smiled. How was your cultivation today? Did you go pick spirit herbs with your friends? Although their legs weren't nimble, they could still pluck spiritual herbs. Of course, they had to be accompanied. My friends aren't free. They're all cultivating. I'll go next time. Tan Tiankong smiled warmly, but told a lie. He didn't have many friends, and most of them rejected him. Even if he had friends, he didn't want to be a burden to them. Therefore, if someone asked him to go with them, he wouldn't go and would avoid meeting them. After all, there was still a certain degree of danger in picking spiritual herbs. The god domain of the three realms wouldn't eliminate all the dangers. There would still be dangers that should exist. For example, in a dangerous place, or when picking spiritual herbs, there will be demon beasts pouncing on them and biting them. This was to let them maintain their courage. If there was no danger, then what's the difference between them and sheep? They would just stay at home. It's very safe here. If one day they could go out, wouldn't they die miserably? Therefore, there will still be people dying here. Everything depends on their own ability. Therefore, Tan Tiankong, in order not to implicate his own people, did not go with them. Those demon beasts were not weak. Core condensation cultivators could barely deal with them. Tan Tiankong's legs weren't nimble, so the difficulty was even higher. If he went with his companions, he would only drag them down. If that's the case, then I'll go next time when I have time. They didn't think that their son was lying and began to eat. Tianyun, who has been paying attention to this side, felt that he was a promising talent. Perseverance has always been something he valued. Tan Tiankong endured humiliation, but he didn't give up any hope, which made him admire him very much. Then, his eyes continued to move to other cultivators. Along the way, he saw a lot of remarkable people, and several of them were in good condition, which made him feel quite satisfied. It seems that the overall quality is good. I still have some expectations for the selection of disciples. Although he could see that there were some good people, he still had to wait and see how the real situation was. There were many unknown factors, so he still had to wait and see. Soon, when Shi Shuiyun announced this matter, it immediately caused 1,000 ripples, directly detonating the whole three realms. What, Heavenly Cloud's great emperor is going to recruit disciples? This is incredible. I thought Heavenly Cloud's great emperor wouldn't recruit disciples. I didn't expect him to really recruit disciples. Yes, Heavenly Cloud's great emperor is so powerful, I thought no one was qualified to be his disciple. All of them were excited as if they were injected with chicken blood. No, the recruitment standard must be very high. I definitely have no hope. Yes, the standard must be very high, such as how high the talent and how high the cultivation level. Think about it carefully, it should be so, otherwise anyone can participate. After hearing these things, they calmed down very rationally and felt that there was no hope for them. Their originally excited mood suddenly sank to the bottom, and they were afraid that they could only watch. What are you thinking about? There is only one standard, that is, the age can't exceed 1,000 years, there is no other limit. One of the cultivators smiled at them. What? They were suddenly shocked, wondering if they heard wrong. There was only one standard, and it was that the age couldn't exceed 1,000 years, and the rest was up to them. Did we hear it wrong? That's the condition? Yes, that's the condition. Then, what are you waiting for? Hurry up and sign up. One by one, they rushed to sign up as if they were injected with chicken blood. Life was full of ups and downs. Before, they thought they couldn't participate, but now they learned that they could participate. It was really a surprise. Chapter 15:28. After this matter was announced, all the qualified cultivators rushed to the registration office. There were many checkpoints at the registration office, so there was no need to worry about not being able to register. At the same time, everything was free, and there was no need to pay any fees. While one by one came to register, it also brought endless blows. Cripple Tan, you also came to register? When they saw Tan Tiankong coming to register, they all mocked and ridiculed him, thinking that this cripple still hoped to be selected. This was simply an idiot's dream. Tan Tiankong clenched his fists, blue veins popped out, anger tumbled in his heart, but he did not erupt. Verbal attacks were not physical attacks, so the other party did not violate the rules. If it really didn't go well, he could ask the other party for a martial arts competition. To put it bluntly, if the other party insulted him, he could use the means of martial arts competition to regain his dignity. But he did not do so. Everything was suppressed in his heart, and he did not want to erupt. Why can't Brother Tan come? His ability is much stronger than all of you. That's right, Brother Tan is very diligent in cultivation, more diligent than all of you. Tan Tienkong's friends all came to support. Each and every one of them was extremely angry. Their friend was being insulted. They definitely stood up to refute. More diligent than us? They coldly looked at Tan Tienkong's foot and disdainfully said, even if you work hard, can hard work be used to eat? Can hard work cure this foot? If you have the ability, don't talk nonsense, directly compete with us. You. Each and every one of them was angry and wanted to compete. Tan Tiankong stretched out his hand to stop them, coldly looked at the people who laughed at him and said, do you know why I don't compete with you? Because you are not qualified enough. He endured silently, because he did not want to cause trouble with these people. There was no meaning in it. For him, these were all small characters. He wanted to cure his foot before he could truly erupt. Otherwise, even if he showed good ability, this foot injury would always be a problem, and it was easy for problems to arise. For example, in more battles, he would become the opponent's target. Our qualifications are not qualified enough? What a joke. You speak as if you are a super genius. If you have the ability, you will be selected. If you are selected to become a personal disciple, when we see you in the future, we will directly walk backwards. All of them were furious. If it weren't for the fact that they couldn't fight, they would have already done so. I can't guarantee that I won't be chosen, but I dare say that I will definitely be much stronger than you. Tan Tiankong dropped a sentence, turned around and left, ignoring them. How could Tan Tiankong guarantee that he would be selected? No one could guarantee that they would not be selected. No one knew what Yi Tianyun's standards were. The scariest thing was not having any standard. That was the scariest. After all, what would be tested at that time? Was it a duel or something else? Everything was unknown. Without being there, one wouldn't know what the real trial was like. This kind of thing also happened in other places. Yu Yao, you're so weak, yet you dare to register here? Lu Yu, your talent is so poor. You've been cultivating for so many years, but you're still at the spirit core stage. How dare you participate? Zilong, your bloodline is at the bottom. You don't have any power at all. How dare you register? None of them were optimistic, but they all came to participate, not because they were full of confidence, but because they wanted to try and see what their real level was. More importantly, they wanted to see the person they admired. Therefore, no matter how they were ridiculed, they would try their best to participate. In Yi Tianyun's history, he had climbed from a waste without any vitality to the current supreme existence. Therefore, Yi Tianyun is more of a self-motivation target among cultivators with average talent. The location of the disciple selection was not on a planet, but a continent specially built by Tianyun. Through his own means, he easily gathered the surrounding rocks or moved various mountain rocks to build a special continent. This continent was huge, larger than any planet. It was not difficult to create this thing, any heavenly master could do it. But this method, in the eyes of others, was really a godlike existence. After the preparations were complete, all the participants and spectators who had signed up could come together. However, only the participants could come to the inner area. If everyone squeezed in, they would really need to build a huge area. Tianyun did not have that much time, so he just let the participants come in, and the rest of the spectators could watch from the outside. There were also all kinds of illusion stones outside, which could project images to various places, so that everyone could see the scene here. After many disciples arrived, all of them were extremely excited. There was a sea of people here. Because the standard was too low, there were as many as billions of participants. Actually, there were many cultivators who did not participate. They felt that they had no hope, so they did not participate. There were still many who did not have confidence in themselves. If all of them came, there would be as many as 10 billion. The other celestial territories would not do such a large scale. It was not that they could not do it, and they could even do it on a larger scale than this place. But they were too lazy to do so. After all, many of them were not talented or had average comprehensive abilities. What was the point of letting them participate? It was simply a waste of time. Therefore, except for Tianyun, no other force would do such a stupid thing. But Tianyun was so stupid, he wanted to show everyone that he was a cultivator of the three realms' divine realm, and he wanted to make everyone pay attention to him. As long as he was a cultivator of the three realms' divine realm, he would be treated equally. When the participants arrived, Tianyun slowly descended from the air and sat on the seat in the void. After a group of people saw him, they immediately burst into cheers, and the atmosphere directly exploded. Great Emperor of Heavenly Clouds! Great Emperor of Heavenly Clouds! Great Emperor of Heavenly Clouds! His prestige was officially manifested at this moment. Looking at the group of people below cheering excitedly, even if their throats were hoarse from shouting, they still wanted to shout. Tianyun is the only one who can win the hearts of the people. The other forces disdained the weak to worship them. It was meaningless. Only the strong followed them, and that was what they needed. In their opinion, Tianyun was a fool. Tianyun looked around with a smile on his face. Is this our own force? Are they our own people? Tianyun shook his head. From the original Jade Palace to the current Celestial Territory, it was really an unimaginable thing. The gap was too big. Immediately, he stretched out his hand, and everyone immediately quieted down. Everything was so neat. There was no need for anyone to speak, just a gesture. Chapter 1529. Tianyun looked at the frenzied crowd, his heart pounding. To the powerhouses of the other factions, this was nothing. In fact, they felt that it was normal. To him, this was the process of going from nothing to something. It was very meaningful. How could he not be excited? Seeing that all of you can participate, I am sincerely happy. I know that some did not participate, some did not want to participate, some did not have confidence in themselves, and some did not participate because others said they did not have the right to participate. To these people, I just want to tell them not to be controlled by others, and especially not to be controlled by themselves. If you want to walk the path of Tao, you must follow your heart. As long as you do what you want, that is the true Tao. Tianyun's voice was sonorous and powerful. His seemingly calm tones spread throughout the God realm of the three realms, striking directly at their hearts. All of them were stunned, especially those who did not participate. A ball of fire suddenly ignited in their hearts, and they felt that they really should have participated. But was it too late to participate now? Regret immediately filled their hearts. Why didn't I participate? Why do I feel that I can't do it? Maybe it's because even I feel that I can't do it, that's why I feel that I can't do it. Why was I so stupid? You should go and participate, not stay here. Can I still participate now? I still want to sign up. All of them were ignited by Yi Tianyun's words. They all wanted to participate, some were told too much, and so they did not participate. Some were like Yi Tianyun said, if they did not have confidence in themselves, they would not participate. Just as they were feeling a little unwilling, Yi Tianyun's voice rang out again. I will give you one more chance. Hurry up and participate now, and you will have a chance, Yi Tianyun announced with a smile. After the announcement, the entire god realm of the three realms was in an uproar again. Those who did not participate all rushed over to participate. Whether or not they could be chosen, if they did not even have this bit of courage, how could they achieve great things? This was Yi Tianyun's original intention. Perhaps among so many cultivators, only a small portion could be chosen, perhaps not more than a handful. But if they wanted to participate, it would be an obstacle to their future cultivation. Being able to think clearly was the real key. How could he have a breakthrough if he had been suppressing his depression? Soon, a lot of cultivators rushed over here, and Yi Tianyun's generosity made everyone admire him even more. Some lowered their heads and remained silent, as if their thoughts had been read. These people were the ones who mocked other cultivators. They were worried that Yi Tianyun would be able to see through them and they would lose their qualifications. But how could Yi Tianyun tell? He didn't know how to read minds, so he didn't know what they were thinking. Moreover, even if he knew who had done such a thing, he wouldn't be kicked out, but in his heart, he definitely wouldn't be considered as a candidate for a disciple. Character was very important to him, even more important than talent. For the other forces, moral conduct and personality were not important. Even if they were homicidal maniacs, they would still be heavily nurtured. To Yi Tianyun, none of these were important targets to nurture. Because these people were easy to betray and even more so, they were easy to stab in the back. What was the point of spending so much effort to nurture them? To help others fatten up? Soon, they all rushed over. The number of people increased by a few 100 million, increasing the number of participants. Seeing them come over, Yi Tianyun was very satisfied. This was the effect he wanted. After waiting for a while, they finally arrived one after another. Those who were supposed to come were all here. Those who didn't come really wouldn't come. Yi Tianyun's words didn't mean that they could move everyone's hearts. Some had low self-esteem and some had physical defects, so they didn't dare to take a step forward. This wasn't something he could control. He was the great emperor here, not a true god. He couldn't make everyone come over. He wanted everyone to come because he wanted to nurture them and pick out the most outstanding disciples. There were many elders and attendants present, who said that he had to choose disciples. Couldn't the other elders choose disciples? That was why all the experts chose the disciple selection, and not just him. He hadn't announced this yet, so everyone thought that it was just Yi Tianyun choosing disciples. Very good. You all have the courage to come. This proves that you all have limitless potential. Yi Tianyun said with a smile, then let me explain the rules. I won't limit the number of disciples. As long as you meet the standard, I'll take you. If 100 pass, then they'll all be my disciples. If 1,000 pass, then they'll all be my disciples. Not setting a limit on the number of participants shocked them. They had never seen such a generous move before. Normally, experts would choose the best. Not to mention the number, they would choose the top 3. Yi Tianyun was exaggerating. He didn't limit the number of people. However, they weren't too excited. Not limiting the number of people didn't mean that he was recruiting at will. Only God knew how difficult it would be. It would be good if 1 or 2 passed. Next, I'll tell you something motivating. I'm not the only one choosing disciples. Many elders and divine generals will also participate. This means that you all have a higher chance of being chosen. As long as you perform well, you can become an elder or a divine general's disciple. So don't give up easily. Even if you don't meet my standard, it doesn't mean that you can't become their disciple. At this moment, rows of elders and immortal generals were sitting there with smiles on their faces. They felt that this method was really good. Only Tianyun had such appeal. If it were them, they wouldn't have the chance to be selected. Selecting the best disciples was in line with their idea. This is great. This way, even if you don't get chosen by the Heavenly Cloud's great emperor, you may be chosen by other elders. Yes, in addition to the Heavenly Cloud's great emperor, I also want to join the martial divine general. In addition to the Heavenly Cloud's great emperor, I also want to join the dream divine general. One by one, they were even more excited. They didn't expect that there would be an additional choice, which made them even more excited. As long as they were chosen by any elder or divine general, it would be an honor and a chance for them to make a meteoric rise. This was a pleasant surprise. The rest of the elders didn't expect that Tianyun would use this to greatly expand the strength of the Heavenly Cloud's great emperor. Some divine generals and elders didn't have time to choose disciples, so this was a very good opportunity. Chapter 1530. Tianyun's explanation made everyone's mood even higher, wave after wave of excitement. This was definitely an unexpected surprise. How could they not be happy? It was like thinking that there was only one prize, but suddenly there were hundreds of other prizes. One could imagine the feeling. The more opportunities he had, the greater the chances he had. Therefore, they were even more motivated. At least they wouldn't have to completely complete the trial to become Tianyun's disciple. Some felt that they wouldn't succeed, but if they performed well, they would undoubtedly be noticed by the other elders. Other than that, there are other surprises waiting for you to discover. Tianyun looked at them and smiled. At the same time, everyone quieted down. But the excitement on their faces couldn't be easily suppressed. Then let's begin the trial. My trial is very simple. Tianyun waved his hand and a giant staircase appeared in the air. It came crashing down and quickly filled up the empty space. The staircase was very wide. It took up more than half of the land. It could accommodate hundreds of millions of people at once, or even billions. The further one went, the smaller the staircase became. But no matter how small it could accommodate many people walking at the same time. Although not everyone could go up at once, they could go up in several batches. After all, the first batch of people who had walked up the stairs immediately had empty spots for other cultivators to go up. Such a tall staircase? They were dumbfounded when they saw the staircase reaching into the clouds. It was their first time seeing such a giant staircase. Tianyun just waved his hand and it was all here. Actually, this was all very ordinary. But after Tianyun made it big, it became especially shocking. At the end of the day, this was just a superior grade heavenly Tao treasure. It looked big, but its grade wasn't high. But to them, it was an extremely shocking existence. After all, even superior grade heavenly Tao treasures couldn't be obtained without being at least a divine lord. In the entire 3 realms, how many divine lords could there be? Apart from some of the divine spirits who had joined in, there was basically no one who had reached this level by themselves. The Lord of Heaven was the highest. Moreover, it was used for cultivators with ordinary cultivations. Naturally, it would have a shocking effect. There was no need for high-grade treasures. As far as the eye could see, among those who participated in this trial, the highest cultivation level was only at the Earth Monarch realm, while the lowest cultivation level was only at the Body Refinement realm. The purpose of the trial is very simple. You only need to climb to the highest level to become my disciple. No matter how many there are, they can all become my disciples. On the contrary, if no one can meet the requirements, then I can only say that I won't even accept a single disciple. Tianyun said indifferently, I will not lower my standards. The standards are here, and they will never change. He had to fix a standard. He wouldn't lower himself just because there were so many people who couldn't reach the peak. He wouldn't do it. Either he met the standard or he didn't want it. The group of people looked up, but they couldn't see the peak even if they looked up. There were so many steps that they couldn't even count them clearly. The total number of steps is 108,000 steps. Climb to the highest peak and you can become my disciple. There can't be any fights or disturb others along the way. If you are discovered, you will be expelled from the God domain of the three realms. Tianyun waved his hand and said solemnly, "The trial will now officially begin." The rules were that simple, and the trial was also very simple. To put it bluntly, it was to climb the stairs. Tianyun had experienced it so many times that he felt that the best situation to test a person was to climb the stairs in a simple and crude manner. Of course, there were many things involved in climbing the stairs. It wasn't simply climbing the stairs. It was a test of perseverance and Tao heart. The content of the test was that simple. It didn't rely on talent or cultivation level. It was just one's ability. According to the different cultivation levels, there would be different difficulties. Thus, there was no need to worry about unfair situations. His requirement was never about talent. It wasn't in the past, and it wasn't now. Under the command, they seemed to have gone crazy as they rapidly climbed the stairs. They all wanted to prove themselves, and they wanted to see how high they could climb. All of them stared at the highest point, feeling that it was their final destination. After the trial began, Tianyun and the others stayed at the side and watched to see who had the greatest potential. The other elders also stared at them. However, this was just the beginning. Some of them just casually glanced at them and didn't look at them anymore. Instead, they chatted with the people beside them. After all, it was just the beginning. What was there to see? It would only be interesting towards the end. Right now, they couldn't see anything at all. It would only be interesting towards the end. This year's disciple selection competition is really lively. Every time there is a commotion, it can push the God domain of the three realms forward. Even if we fight to the death, we won't even be able to get a push from you. Shi Shuiyan shook her head. After knowing the details of Tianyun's plan, she realized that it was a very perfect plan. After the trial ended, they would be able to select a large number of outstanding disciples. After some focused training, they would be able to obtain a large number of mainstays. How could the God domain of the three realms not prosper? Although they usually screened disciples, compared to Tianyun's screening, the difference was too great. Especially when he personally checked, the significance was different. Tianyun's cultivation was the highest. His method would definitely be more outstanding. You're exaggerating. Without all of you to build a good foundation, no matter how much I push, it would be meaningless. Tianyun shook his head. He wouldn't take all the credit. Without a good foundation, everything was nonsense. As time passed, they all climbed up quickly. However, after climbing a few hundred steps, their speed slowed down. They couldn't go any faster even if they wanted to. Some fell into an illusion and couldn't pull themselves out. Some failed. They bounced off the stairs and had to start all over again. Whether they were talented or average, the results were about the same. Tan Tiankong's gaze was firm. He climbed up step by step. His results weren't considered good, but he was very stable. He walked step by step and didn't get bounced off. Over time, he easily surpassed those cultivators who mocked him, and climbed to a higher level of the regional domain. The cultivators who mocked him before were all stunned. A cripple could climb higher than them? Tianyun, that one with an injured leg, is walking really steadily. Shi Shuyun also noticed Tan Tiankong. Tan Tiankong was in the middle, but his steadiness attracted many people's attention. Chapter 1531. Mentality and perseverance were both very important. If one's mentality was always negative, it was basically impossible for one to have any breakthroughs. Therefore, he had always emphasized this point. Without a good mentality and hard work, even if one had potential, one would not be able to unleash it. If one was immediately depressed and fell into depression, how could one continue? As time passed, many cultivators began to climb to the higher levels, but there was still a big gap. After all, there were a total of 108,000 steps on the stairs, and the one who had climbed to the highest point was only less than 10,000 steps. The cultivators who climbed to the highest level were quite talented. When he saw that he had climbed to the highest level, he was secretly delighted. If he could reach the top, he would definitely attract some attention. This would undoubtedly give him more points. Unexpectedly, no one paid attention to him. Instead, they paid attention to the other cultivators. It was not that he was not eye-catching enough. On the contrary, he was quite eye-catching. However, if they paid attention to him casually, they would see what would happen later. Although he had come first, it was meaningless. This was just the beginning. What was the point of staring at him? If they wanted to watch, they should see if there were other cultivators with potential later on. In the process of climbing, many cultivators immediately sensed a steady stream of energy surging from under their feet to promote their cultivation. This time, they immediately realized what Tianyun was talking about before. What is this little surprise? During the process of the trial, they could increase their cultivation. Not only could it increase their cultivation, but it could also train their souls and bodies. This meant that they could increase their overall strength. It was simply unbelievable. There were so many cultivators. To increase the strength of billions of cultivators at once, how much money did it take? In fact, a lot of energy was needed to provide for so many cultivators to absorb. He would have to rely on the spirit-gathering formation around him and the other cores. After a certain connection, this effect could be achieved. This was even done with the help of the divine spirit race from Tianyun. With their nature-defying abilities, they could complete such a large formation. When they found out about this, they were really shocked by Tianyun. To increase their cultivation by hundreds of millions or even billions in one go. Just thinking about it was terrifying. Of course, it could not be continuously increased. There would definitely be a limit. At the same time, the higher one climbed, the better the effect would be. At the beginning, the effect was average. This meant that the more steps they climbed, the stronger they would be. When they sensed it, they were all extremely touched. They were not fools. They all knew what this meant. Usually, cultivation places required all kinds of spirit stones or spirit-gathering arrays to increase their cultivation. Now, there were so many cultivators, and all of them could improve. The difficulty was undoubtedly huge. Ding, congratulations, Tianyun successfully gathered the faith of 100 million people, gained 10,000 crazy point 10,000 compression mastery. Ding. Congratulations, Tianyun successfully gathered the faith of 500 million people, gained 50k compressed crazy point, 50k compressed mastery. Ding, congratulations to player, Tianyun successfully assembled. Ding. Congratulations to player, Tianyun successfully gathered the faith of 5 billion people, gained 500,000 compressed crazy point, 500,000 compressed mastery, and got the title God of Faith. God of Faith. A super powerful title that can only be obtained after receiving the worship of 5 billion people. The effect is to gather the power of faith and bless the user. When a certain amount of power of faith is gathered, the user can deal 5 to 100 times more damage. Note, can only be used inside the 3 realms God realm, not outside. After Tianyun saw it, he almost jumped out of the chair. 5 to 100 times the damage, this is so powerful? Looking carefully, he had an extra faith value. As these cultivators continue to climb and improve themselves, the faith value will increase. When a certain amount of faith value is used, it can burst out more power, very similar to crazy damage mode. Not only the consumption, but also the time limit. The two are similar, the more faith points, the more powerful the effect. The overall situation is that 100 points of faith can burst out 100 times the damage, and it can only last for 1 minute. If it is 5 times, it only needs to consume 5 points, and so on. As for how to get it, it is to maintain the faith in him, pray for him from time to time, and you can increase it. To put it bluntly, he has really become a god in their hearts. Every time they cultivate, they will pray for the heavenly cloud's great emperor to bless them with a breakthrough. It is equivalent to worshipping the gods and Buddhas, and they can get faith value. Points are quite difficult to obtain, it takes time to accumulate, and so on. At least now, with so many people believing in him, it is only increasing little by little, and it is very slow. After a long time, it can only increase a few dozen points. It is really quite slow. But it is better than nothing. As long as it continues to increase, it is not a problem to accumulate thousands or even tens of thousands of points. At that time, the burst of 100 times damage can last for a long time. If I use this state, wouldn't it be heaven-defying when the two are stacked? Etienne's eyes lit up. When the two are stacked, it can reach 220 times damage. Although it can only be used in the 3 realms God realm, it is enough for him. If he stays here, who would dare to come in? At that time, whoever comes will be killed. He didn't expect the disciple selection to have such a surprise. Originally, he wanted to select disciples and at the same time enhance the comprehensive strength. Who knew that he can also get a special title? It is quite unexpected. Of course, this is not the main point, it is just an addition. This kind of qualitative change is indeed something that Etienne did not expect. Originally they worship him, but it is not to the point of faith. After all, many of them have not seen the real person. At most, they worship him, their hearts are filled with respect. Now that this kind of generosity, it immediately makes them go crazy, directly becoming his believers. The degree of their worship increased. What is it? Shuyan saw Etienne beaming. She does not know what happened. Nothing. I feel that the disciple selection this time is not bad. Etienne smiled. He does not know what the criteria to obtain a title is. Many of them suddenly appear. Now it seems that doing these things is really not bad. As long as he continues to develop his faction, there will definitely be rewards. Of course, from now on, your prestige will be even higher. Shuyan does not know. She thought that Etienne is happy that so many people support him. Following Etienne's gaze, groups of people continue to climb up the stairs. He pays special attention to those who usually perform average or those who are at the bottom. Chapter 1532. As time passed, they rushed up one by one. They did not know how long they had, so they quickly rushed up while it was not over. Especially if they did not fail, no matter how many times they failed, it would not be a problem. They just did not know how long it would take, whether it would be a week or a month. They did not care whether they could succeed or not, they mainly wanted to climb to a higher level, as high as they could. After all, the higher they climbed, the more benefits they would obtain. To put it bluntly, even if no elder chose them, they would continue to climb, treating it as self-cultivation. This kind of opportunity was extremely rare. How could they waste it? Therefore, they took advantage of the fact that it was not over to continue climbing. This kind of positive phenomenon was all good. This made Etienne very satisfied. Even if there was no chance, it was good to have this kind of mentality. As for the ending time, he really had not thought about it. In any case, when he felt that it could end, he would choose to end. Very quickly, they quickly climbed to 50,000 to 60,000 steps, and had already covered half of the distance. This was a more crucial time. If they failed here, they would have to start all over again. Etienne's setting was so simple and crude. As long as they failed, they would be bounced off, starting from the starting point. Of course, they would not be seriously injured, they would slowly fall down, and then have to start all over again. Starting all over again, the difficulty would be the same. But with previous experience, the difficulty would be reduced, just that they would have to waste more time. Among them, there were a few who had never failed, and it just so happened that their usual situation was that they belonged to the bottom, the type that people looked down on. For example, Tan Tiankong was one of them. He might not be in the top, but he was definitely the stronger type, at least in the top 100. The same was true for the rest of the bottom. All of them could fight their way to a higher level. Among them, there were also super geniuses. They could also fight their way to the top. The most terrifying thing was not geniuses, but geniuses who had talent and were very hard-working. Among them, there were such people who worked hard to climb up, and their perseverance did not lose to anyone. When Tan Tienkong's parents saw this, they were stunned. Her son, who had been looked down upon in the beginning, limped his way up to a higher level. Previously, no one was optimistic about their child, but now their child could lead all the way. Although he was not in the top 10, to be able to fight his way to the top 100 was enough to shock the people nearby. To be able to fight his way into the top 100 out of so many cultivators, how could this not be shocking? Who said our son is useless? Who dares to say that our son's legs and feet are not nimble? He is useless. Tan Tienkong's mother's face was full of tears, and the eyes of the father next to her were red. All along, their son's shortcomings in this area had been pointed out. How could they not be heartbroken? In order to treat this kind of injury, one would need to have a higher cultivation level or buy bone-replenishing pills, which were both very difficult to obtain. Although the god realm of the three realms was very fair, it did not mean that those who had flaws would be treated. As long as it was not the kind of dying, this kind of situation needed to be treated by oneself. After all, there were so many cultivators. If they were to treat each and every one of them, the three realms' divine territory would suffer a loss. Thus, he used the same old method. If he couldn't even walk, he could still obtain the bone-replenishing pill. As long as they made some contributions, for example, doing something at home, they would still be able to earn contribution points. As for advance payment and the like, this was also possible, but one would have to pay double the price or even triple the price. Basically, it was equivalent to selling their bodies. This would motivate them to work harder. It seemed inhumane, but it was too ordinary, and it was easy to have an advance payment at will. The three realms' divine territory was not a tycoon-level divine territory. It couldn't distribute everything at will, so maintaining balance was the key. Tan Tienkong's performance really shocked those who looked down on him before, and now they didn't know what to say. Being able to climb to such a high level, even if he failed in the future, it was enough to be proud. Moreover, it was possible that other elders would take a fancy to him. In fact, he was really taken by the divine generals and elders, and they all stared at him. After all, limping up, how could it not attract people's attention? Others didn't limp, but they couldn't climb higher, which was the most annoying thing. His cultivation level is not high, but his ability is good. The Heavenly Cloud's Great Emperor's selection is definitely not wrong. If there is no problem, I will choose him. Bullshit, I have taken a fancy to him before. He should be taught by me. He is definitely suitable for me. No, it should be me who wants him. From the moment he stepped on the stairs, I have already taken a fancy to him. Nonsense, you can eat whatever you want, but you can't say whatever you want. Do you dare to say that you really took a fancy to him as soon as he stepped on the stairs? One by one, the elders quarreled about this, and it was really funny. It wasn't just Tan Tiankong, but the other participants were included in the scope of competition. They didn't know what Yi Tianyun's test was, but they believed that Yi Tianyun's choice was definitely right. Therefore, they chose the best among them. Yi Tianyun watched from the side, the group of people trying to climb up. It was really a spectacular scene. Although there was no competition, the situation was extremely fierce, and everyone rushed up one by one. Especially the group of people in the front row, one was rushing faster than the other, scrambling to grab the first place. The first place was always the most dazzling, and it could attract the attention of trillions of people. Even if they failed later, at least people would remember their face. Honor was the meaning of their existence. Therefore, it was still white-hot, and everyone rushed forward. It was quite shocking. As time passed quickly, a week passed, many people rushed to the 70,000 to 80,000 step, and the number of people who continued to go up was pitifully few. There were billions of cultivators, but those who could really reach this area were less than 1,000 people. As for those who could reach the 80,000 step, there were less than 100 people. Such a huge difference, it was really shocking. Tianyun didn't even need to compete. He just needed to rely on this point, and it was enough for him to choose what he wanted. Perhaps some areas were not comprehensive enough, but his goal was to target this, and the rest could be slowly nurtured. The overall standard is not bad. Looks like I can still recruit a few disciples. Tianyun looked at the cultivators in the front row. Although they were still quite far away, he could already see part of it. This divine staircase was created by him, so naturally, he knew what the difficulty of the later stages was. Now that it looked like he was going very steadily, the later stages should not be a big problem. Chapter 1533. As the months passed, the further they went, the harder it was to climb. At the later stages, it would be considered pretty good if they could climb 100 steps in a day. Therefore, the difficulty was still extremely high and the time required was slightly longer. Tianyun had already expected this situation. Therefore, he didn't specify a time limit and decided to observe the situation. If the situation was more difficult, then the time limit would be set to be longer, otherwise it would be shorter. He couldn't keep this place open forever. The consumption was simply too shocking. If this continued, wouldn't the cores that were transferred here be drained dry? No matter what, he had to let these cores rest for a period of time to recover the consumed energy. Otherwise, it wouldn't be beneficial for the cores if they continued to be in deficit. Finally, the first batch of people rushed above the 100,000th step. There were less than 20 people. These were the most outstanding existences, and Tan Tiankong was one of them. Tan Tiankong gritted his teeth and walked up step by step. He felt that he had reached his limit every time, but he stubbornly held on and climbed up. In his opinion, only by working hard would he be able to stand out. He didn't want to continue being mocked, and he didn't want his family to be sad because of him. He wasn't the only one thinking this way. The rest of the participants were thinking the same way. Among the top 20, those with average talent occupied a small portion. In fact, it wasn't that their talent was bad, but their true value wasn't reflected in their talent. Everyone's situation was different, just like other occupations. Pill refinement masters, divine craftsmen, or even divine carving masters had a clear division of labor. There was a clear division of labor. Some tried to become a divine inscription master and failed to become a divine creation master. Some tried to become an alchemist and discovered that they were about to succeed. The most important thing was to find something suitable for themselves. Soon, they will basically be chosen from this batch. Tianyun looked at the roughly 20 people and selected his disciple from them. The audience watched with their hearts tightening. Who would be able to become Tianyun's disciple and obtain this supreme glory? At this point, many people weren't interested in who would be the first to go up, but who would stand at the peak. Even if they failed, they would be frantically recruited and nurtured. To put it bluntly, the elders and divine generals were already watching closely and wouldn't let any of them go. The top 20 cultivators had to be fought over. However, they wouldn't make a move now. Everything would depend on Tianyun's final decision. If some of them caught their eye and successfully passed, then they would have wasted their efforts. Finally, after more than a month, a cultivator successfully reached the top. This cultivator was not a man, but a woman. Who would have thought that the one who reached the top would be a woman? But when everyone saw it, they were so depressed that they wanted to vomit blood. Even Yi Tianyun smiled helplessly. The first to reach first place was none other than Yi Sishue. Yes, it was Yi Tianyun's daughter, Yi Sishue. It was not against the rules for Yi Sishue to climb the divine staircase. As long as she met the requirements, she could participate. But what was the point of her getting first place? Even if they managed to reach the peak, they would be personally taught by Yi Tianyun, and he would teach them everything. If he didn't impart it to his own daughter, who else could he impart it to? I'm first! Yi Sishue made a victory gesture to Yi Tianyun, and then flew over from the air and sat on the seat next to him. Yi Tianyun shook his head and said, "This little girl, I knew she would be the first to reach the top." It seemed like he was blaming her, but it was actually full of love. This made him very satisfied. His daughter could reach the standard, which meant that she worked very hard. It didn't mean that she could easily reach the top by practicing his martial art. There was no relationship between the two. But as for what other people think, that's their business. Soon, someone successfully reached the top, and became the second woman, and it was a female cultivator. This time, the female cultivator happened to be the direct disciple of the Eternal Elder. Her talent was quite good, and she worked very hard. This time, 2 women succeeded in reaching the top in a row, and most of the male cultivators were defeated. If you look closely, it's really more women than men. Among the top 20, there were more than a dozen women, which is really exaggerated. But this is normal. Don't forget what the situation of the 3 realms divine realm was. It was Jade Palace that started with female cultivators. Therefore, in this aspect, they were more focused on training and more strict. In the case that women are generally not as good as men, they will work harder and work harder. Now that they have such achievements, it's not surprising. Just when many male cultivators felt ashamed, a male cultivator finally reached the top. He became the 3rd person to reach the top, which made them heave a sigh of relief. Finally, a male cultivator succeeded, and there won't be a situation where no one can reach the top anymore. This male cultivator's talent is not bad, and his cultivation is at Spirit King stage, which is not very strong. After a period of time, another woman reached the top. Her cultivation is also on the low side, which is the Spirit King stage. In the audience, most of the people who reach the top are basically not the Earth Monarch stage or the Lord of Heaven stage. On the contrary, it's the lower the cultivation which shocked them. Could it be that the lower the cultivation, the lower the difficulty? The answer is yes, the lower the cultivation, the lower the standard for Yi Tianyun. Correspondingly, with such a low cultivation, to achieve such amazing perseverance and ability, it is definitely far beyond the existence of the peers. In this case, the potential is still not big. Therefore, Yi Tianyun has his own standards, and it depends on their own performance. Soon, another male cultivator reached the top, and he is Tan Tiankong. A man with weak legs actually reached the top. I climbed up. When Tan Tiankong climbed up, tears immediately gushed out, turned his head and looked behind him, and saw a group of people below, big and small like ants. It is to verify his name, Tiankong. He really stood at the highest peak, looking down on all those who looked down on him, and he succeeded. If there is anyone who shocked the most, it is Tan Tiankong. He wasn't in first place, but his performance had shocked everyone to the core. The lame one beat all the non-lame ones. At this time, Shi Shuyan recalled what Yi Tianyun said before, a lame foot but not a lame heart. This is the reason why he succeeded. I know he can reach the top. Yi Tianyun smiled slightly. He is not too surprised that Tan Tiankong can climb up to the top. There were a lot of things that he could see from the very beginning. Chapter 1534. In the latest batch, 5 people had reached the summit, and only 4 had succeeded. These 4 had welcomed the greatest glory, becoming Yi Tianyun's personal disciples. Among them, there were 2 men and 2 women. This combination was very harmonious, and there was no situation where there were more women than men. However, no one knew how many people would become Yi Tianyun's disciples until the end. After all, the trial was still ongoing. Although it looked balanced, it was indeed not very harmonious in the situation where men were superior to women. It was still unexpected. To other factions, this was very inconceivable. The resources occupied by female cultivators were definitely far inferior to that of male cultivators. Under such circumstances, how could they surpass male cultivators? Therefore, the 3 realms divine realm had another special feature, and that was that men and women had equal resources. There would be no disparity in resources. Now, it was ruthlessly proven that women could still hold up half the sky. The 4 people who passed were all very excited. They all wondered if they were dreaming. Even so, they still managed to pass successfully. As time passed, it was rather difficult to reach the summit. Some were still dozens of steps away from reaching the summit, but they ended in failure. They were bounced off from high places and had to start from the beginning. It was not like before, where several people could reach the summit. It was like the beginning of the highest level of difficulty. In fact, the difficulty did not change. It was just that their standards were still lacking a little to reach the summit. Finally, after 3 months, Yi Tianyun waved his hand, and the steps quickly dimmed. The divine light on them disappeared, and they returned to their original state. Everything returned to normal. At the same time, they did not feel any pressure at all, nor did they feel any energy coming up from beneath their feet. This meant that the trial was over. They had not succeeded in reaching the summit. The trial is over. There are 4 people who have been selected. They are Xian Chunlan, Hua Yuanlong, Jian Miaozhen, and Tan Tiankong. Among them, Yi Sixue is not considered my disciple. Everyone knows the reason. Yi Tianyun smiled and announced the final result. After hearing this, everyone started cheering. Some were envious while others were jealous. In the end, there were only 5 people who could reach the top. 4 of them could become Yi Tianyun's disciples. Among the 4, 2 of them had average talents, and they were the kind that people talked about every day. They were Tan Tiankong and Jian Miaozhen. Even if the 2 of them were a pair, the talent they displayed was relatively poor. It took a lot of hard work to climb to this level of cultivation. It was really difficult. Most of the people of the same age had cultivation levels that surpassed them. This was the most painful part. When their names were called, all 4 of them shed tears. Perhaps the other 2 were quite talented, but to be chosen as a disciple, Zhang Xian was extremely touched. He felt that his efforts had not been in vain. The rest of the elders and god generals began to select the disciples they had chosen. They had their eyes on someone long ago, so they quickly picked them out. This was probably the first time such a grand disciple recruitment event had ever been held. They all succeeded in finding disciples that they were satisfied with, and in a short while, hundreds or even thousands of people were chosen. However, only a small group of people were selected to be personal disciples. However, it didn't mean that the people who were ranked below 1,000 would not be selected. Some of them were still selected to become disciples of various areas. For example, inner disciples, core disciples, and so on. As long as they met the criteria, they could choose to enter. However, compared to the number of cultivators, there was still a big gap. There were billions of people, but in the end it was estimated that no more than 100,000 people were selected. This ratio was really amazing. Those who were not selected were indeed very disappointed, but they also gained a lot this time. Not only did they see Yi Tianyun, but they also improved their cultivation, which was a very good ending. When everyone felt very satisfied, someone stood up. "Heavenly Cloud's Great Emperor, we are not convinced." "Yes, Heavenly Cloud's Great Emperor, we are not convinced." A group of people came out, and their faces were full of dissatisfaction. Moreover, the number of people in this group was not small. There were tens of thousands of people in a random list. Originally, there were a small number of people who were dissatisfied, but they probably resonated with them and came out one after another. After the rest of the elders saw this, they were very dissatisfied, and when they wanted to say something to let them go back, Tianyun reached out his hand and signaled them not to speak. What is there to be dissatisfied about? Tianyun said indifferently. Xian Chunlan and Hua Yuanlong are both amazing talents, and their usual performance is very good. We are very dissatisfied that they can reach the top. But why can Tan Tiankong and Jian Miaozhen successfully reach the top? We are not convinced about this. The most important thing is that the content of this assessment is to climb the stairs. We can all feel the mystery, but everything is about fighting. We didn't show our strength here, so we are very dissatisfied. They had always been convinced by whoever had the strongest battle prowess. But now they didn't need to fight, they just climbed the stairs, and they could become Tianyun's disciple, so of course they were not convinced. The main reason was that their usual performance was too mediocre, and there were no highlights. Xian Chunlan and Hua Yuanlong were usually amazing, so they didn't need to compete to know that they were not weak, so they agreed that they had such achievements. It's normal for you to have this kind of thinking. Tianyun didn't feel angry at all. When he set up this assessment previously, he knew that there would be people who would be puzzled. How could one be selected as a disciple by climbing the stairs? In the past, the selection of disciples was mainly based on fighting. Whoever could win in the end could become a disciple. It was simple and crude, and the selection was often very accurate. After all, how could they be weak after killing their way out of so many people? On this flight of stairs, any rich combat experience was meaningless. All kinds of martial arts or abilities were meaningless here. Maybe if they wanted to go up, they needed perseverance, and they also needed to break the illusion, but to them it was still not enough. The strongest fist was the hard truth. I'll give you a few simple pointers on the principle. Their usual performance is not good, mainly because their potential has not been stimulated. If you want them to show their outstanding strength, the usual method won't work for them. Tianyun said indifferently, later, I'll help them improve a little, and then I'll show you my true strength. At that time, you will know what the gap is. There are no truly useless people, only wrong methods. Chapter 1535. Immediately, Tianyun took Tan Tiankong and Jian Miaozhen away, and after a few days, he brought them back. When they came back, they were the center of attention, and everyone's eyes were focused on them. They wanted to see if there was any change in them. Since Tianyun took them away, they must have undergone secret special training. Maybe they had a breakthrough in their cultivation. In fact, there was no change at all. Their cultivation level was still the same. Tan Tiankong was still in core condensation stage, and Jian Miaozhen was still in Spirit King stage. Not to mention their cultivation level, they didn't change at all. Whether it was their equipment or temperament, it felt like they just went out for a walk and then came back. There was no difference. Everyone looked at each other, and they didn't know what was going on. Heavenly Cloud's great emperor, do you really want to do this? Their attitude is too rude. The elder next to him was very dissatisfied with this group of disciples who questioned Tianyun. Tianyun's way of doing things, how can he let them criticize him? Was Tianyun's approach wrong all along? The elder didn't have such a thought. Or maybe it's a matter of realm, they all can see what kind of disciple Tianyun chose. They had a deeper understanding, and they felt that the disciples in this area had great potential. Some disciples were indeed poor, but with strong perseverance, given more time, they could still become a very strong expert. In the end, this was to strive for stability, not to soar to the sky. This was the type of disciple that Tianyun chose. He didn't want to soar to the sky, he just wanted to be stable and steady. Some disciples became more arrogant as they grew, and it was very likely that they would limit their own development. There is no need to say more about this matter. Your realm is different and your views are different. Now that there are so many people watching, if you don't show your level, you won't be able to convince the public. Tianyun said indifferently. I am not a real god, and I can't make everyone absolutely trust me, especially this kind of special people. They were quite obedient to Tianyun's orders, and even if he asked them to die, they wouldn't hesitate. They worshipped him very much, and there was nothing wrong with that. However, it did not mean that everyone could achieve absolute trust. Especially when something that they could not understand appeared, they would have some doubt. Of course, putting aside these suspicions, it wasn't a problem for them to fight with all their might. After all, the two of them were of different types. They had to be completely resolved. Shortly after, Tianyun looked at them and said, I've already told them to get ready. Since you guys like to fight, then let's focus on fighting. I believe everyone can see that Tan Tiankong's cultivation is at the 5th level of core condensation, which belongs to the middle level. As for the opponents, as long as they are below the core condensation stage, they can challenge us without any restrictions. At the end of the day, it's just a battle of a higher level. As long as your cultivation is not higher than core condensation stage, you can fight on the stage. As long as you defeat him, you can become my direct disciple. After Tianyun made the announcement, the crowd was in an uproar. It was one thing to fight someone of a higher cultivation level, but the injury on his leg hadn't even recovered yet, and he could still fight someone of a higher cultivation level? Climbing stairs was not a competition. The two were different. His legs were not nimble when climbing stairs, so he could take it slow. But could he take it slow in a fight? If he was half a beat slower, he would immediately die. However, Tianyun's words really stimulated them. As long as they defeated Tan Tiankong, they could become Tianyun's direct disciple. How could they not be excited? This time, they finally felt balanced in their hearts. As long as they defeated Tan Tiankong, they could have the opportunity to become Tianyun's disciple. Immediately, Tan Tiankong jumped down and landed on the stage. Holding a long stick in his hand, he looked at the crowd coldly and said, Who's first? Many of the cultivators below immediately reacted and quickly jumped up and said, I'll go first. The one who came up was a 7th level of core condensation stage disciple. After he went up, the disciples below were filled with regret. They didn't expect that they would be half a beat slower. It's over, this kid is going to get it. Alas, such a good spot, it's gone. Their faces were filled with unwillingness. They hesitated for half a beat before they were snatched by someone else. Now, the disciple position was going to be handed over to someone else. They all felt that Tan Tiankong would lose without a doubt. His leg injury is still there, his cultivation hasn't improved, and his equipment hasn't changed. Although it's a bit unfair, but in order to become Tianyun's disciple, they are ready to go all out. As the two of them confronted each other, Tan Tiankong's opponent looked at him and said with a smile, Brother Tan, please advise me. But my cultivation is higher than yours, I can let you attack first. No need, I'll defend the ring, you attack. Tan Tiankong's expression was indifferent, indicating his opponent to attack first. His opponent was startled, and immediately smiled and said, If that's the case, then I won't be polite. He definitely won't be polite, he must win, how can he lose? Immediately, he pulled out his sword and fiercely attacked. His sword technique was like a flower, rolling up several sword flowers in the air, and directly attacked Tan Tiankong. He didn't aim at Tan Tiankong's foot injury, it's a very direct attack. Tan Tiankong didn't move. When the attack was about to hit him, suddenly, his other normal foot moved to the side, and very flexibly dodged to the side, and fiercely smashed his long stick. Bang! The opponent was directly sent flying by the rod, and rolled out of the battling platform. The originally noisy noise suddenly turned into a deathly silence. They saw that Tan Tiankong was very agile. Even if he was on one foot, he could still be so agile. The degree of agility far exceeded their usual performance. This caused them to be stunned. They thought that he would dodge slowly, or it would be inconvenient for him to dodge. Who would have thought that he would be so nimble? The injured foot didn't move at all, and completely exploded with one foot. Not bad, not bad. Tianyun smiled slightly. He has an injury on one foot, and is not nimble enough, so he will put all his strength into his other foot, and at the same time, constantly hone his fighting with one foot. The degree of agility is definitely not inferior to that of a normal foot. Shi Shuyun, who was at the side, nodded. The more flaws there were, the more astonishing the degree of effort. Others had 2 normal feet, but he only had 1, so he constantly honed his one foot, how to become nimble, how to dodge. This kind of effort was undoubtedly even greater, and the reward was even less. But he did it, and was even able to kill his opponent in one move. I've succeeded. Tan Tiankong gripped his long rod tightly, and let out a long roar towards the sky. He had never fought with others. Saying that his opponent didn't have the qualifications was actually because he didn't have confidence in himself. Chapter 1536. Tan Tienkong's performance made them stunned. They didn't expect him to have such a fighting style. The flexibility of his body is far beyond their imagination. Next, Tan Tiankong was in high spirits and motioned the next person to come up to fight. Then the next person immediately jumped up. This time his cultivation level is a little higher, 8th level core condensation, 3 levels higher than him. You are quite flexible. It's true that people can't react for a while, but this is the end. When they knew Tan Tienkong's situation, they immediately did not dare to be negligent. At the same time, they will not be attacked by him. Don't talk nonsense, attack. Tan Tiankong is still clenching the long stick, motioning the opponent to attack. Well, as you wish. He doesn't care about anything. Since Tan Tiankong said so, he will not be polite. Then he waved his long sword to attack. This time, compared to the previous cultivator, he is a bit more vigilant. He is staring at Tan Tienkong's movement. He doesn't believe that his normal feet can't be compared to someone with only one foot. Xiu xiu xiu. Under the fierce attack, Tan Tiankong constantly dodged. No matter how fast the opponent is, he can easily avoid it. Then he waved the long stick to counterattack. The continuous fierce attack forced the opponent to retreat a few steps. Bang! Under the long stick attack, the opponent was bounced back a step. Tan Tienkong's foot is not very agile, slammed on the ground and stabbed in a straight line. Boom! The opponent was hit by this long stick, directly flew out and rolled out of the battle stage. He once again showed a perfect performance, perfect defense and perfect flexibility. The other foot is not very agile, although he can't run at will, but when he steps on the ground, he still has a certain explosive power. This is something they didn't think of. They all thought that he can only rely on one foot to dodge. Who can think that he can also attack? After winning again, everyone was shocked. He won 2 games in a row, and it's the type of crushing. This is far beyond their expectations. It is simply unimaginable. 1 foot, can he be so powerful? This is our child. Our child is too powerful. Tan Tienkong's parents cheered. They were a little worried, but now it seems that it is unnecessary. Tan Tienkong's performance was absolutely beyond their expectations. This time, many people had a whole new level of respect for Tan Tiankong. Who would have thought that his performance would be so shocking? He had thought that he would be defeated in the first match. Who would have thought that he would win 2 matches in a row, and with such ease? Next, Tan Tiankong looked at them, his gaze extremely firm. Soon, a challenger jumped on the stage. His cultivation level was higher than the previous challenger. He was at level 9 core condensation stage. His cultivation kept stacking up, getting higher and higher. It wasn't easy to fight someone of a higher cultivation level than him in the first place. Now that his legs weren't nimble enough, how could he continue to win? The answer was certain. In the end, Tan Tiankong still won. There was no gorgeous technique, just a very normal martial art, and a very flexible movement technique. Just like that, he won this round. Following that, he continued to fight a few more rounds. Tan Tiankong won all of them perfectly. Sometimes, when he thought he was going to lose, Tan Tiankong still won. In the end, he won 10 matches in a row. In each match, his opponent was at least at the 5th level of core condensation, and the highest level was at the peak of core condensation. Even though he was able to fight against someone of a higher cultivation level, he still won. The key was that Tan Tiankong did not rest, and fought 10 consecutive battles. However, he wasn't made of iron, and he still got tired. He was already sweating profusely, and the sweat flowed down his feet all over the ground, which looked very exaggerated. Ho ho ho! Tan Tiankong gasped for breath. He took a break for the time being, and he didn't dare to say the next one directly. At this time, the audience was shocked, and they didn't know what to say. Tan Tiankong's performance was really heaven-defying. If he won once or twice, it could be considered as a victory with skills, but now he won so many matches in a row, which represented his amazing strength. This kid's foundation is too strong, and his physical strength is even more amazing, far beyond his peers. Yes, his foundation is too solid. His cultivation level may be lower than some of his peers, but his foundation is very solid. Even if he faces his peers, he can still win. No wonder the heavenly cloud's great emperor is not afraid. With this foundation, in the future, if he uses the right method to cultivate, won't he advance by leaps and bounds? Foundation is very important, and only with a solid foundation can one soar to the sky. Without a good foundation, it will be easy to collapse in the end. Those with strong cultivation level naturally know, and those with weak cultivation level can't see it. But even if they tried their best to explain, it would be meaningless. In the eyes of most cultivators, they can't wait to break through to a higher level tomorrow, so how could they honestly lay a solid foundation? Tan Tiankong's foundation shocked everyone. Fighting above cultivation level is not a dream, but a reality. Those who originally looked down on Tan Tiankong were now shocked. They thought that bringing Tan Tiankong would be a burden. But now it seems that when there is a real problem, they will become a burden. Next, after a short break, Tan Tiankong signaled them to continue to fight. Then another cultivator went up to challenge, and needless to say, Tan Tiankong won. After winning several more matches in a row, he almost collapsed again. After winning so many matches in a row, his cultivation level is not weak, and his overall strength is not bad, but he can still show such amazing strength. After a little rest, when Tan Tiankong wanted to challenge again, Tianyun raised his hand and said in a deep voice, "There is no need to fight. I believe everyone has seen Tan Tiankong's level, and you all know it in your heart. If we continue to fight, it will not make much sense. We are convinced of this." They all admitted that although there are still many people who haven't challenged, but they think that their strength is not as good as the previous losers. In that case, how can they not agree? Well, Tan Tiankong, come back and rest. Jian Miaozhen, come and defend the ring. Tianyun signaled Jian Miaozhen to go to the ring. Yes. Jian Miaozhen held a long sword in her hand and flew to the ring. Jian Miaozhen's appearance is ordinary, cultivation is ordinary, talent is ordinary, everything is so ordinary. The cultivation of the same age as her has already reached the Saint King stage, or even the Star Monarch stage. But her cultivation is at the Spirit King stage. It is really too slow, it is simply at the bottom level. But she succeeded, standing out among so many people, which made many people feel incredible. Old rules. Anyone below the Spirit King stage can challenge. Tianyun waved his hand, indicating that they can continue to fight. you're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.